Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. For such a time as this, once a week, for the past 10 weeks, Hattie had come to the local cafe for Bible study with a few of her friends from church. It was led by Marissa, one of the long-standing members of the church. Once a week, for the past 10 weeks, Hattie had left the cafe feeling uplifted, inspired, and closer to her Creator. And this week, the 11th week, she expected no different. Uplifting music wafted through the speakers, mixing with the sounds of dishes clanking and milk frothing behind the counter. The familiar noise was music to Hattie's ears as she entered the coffee shop. "Hattie!" Carmen squealed, beckoning Hattie over from the door. "Coffee's on me today. I got you your usual." Hattie smiled. Carmen was the personification of generosity, although that wasn't always the case. "How are you doing?" she asked, sliding into the booth that they always sat at. "Better than I deserve," Harper quoted, appearing behind them. It's what Carmen always said when asked that question. It's the truth. God is so good. As long as I'm breathing, it's more than I deserve. She shrugged. Harper slid into the booth next to Hattie, smiling. "Is Marissa late for the first time ever?" Hattie asked, looking around. "I thought I saw her car outside." In response, Marissa came out of the bathroom and joined the 3 college girls at their booth. "Good morning, girls," she said, eyes bright, as she took her seat next to Carmen. The 4 girls took each other's hands, and Marissa opened them in prayer before they opened their Bibles and began reading and discussing the book of Esther. Is it wrong to be so engrossed in divine wisdom that you lose track of what's happening around you? Surely not, although it can be dangerous. What is wrong is to come into a quiet, privately owned cafe at 11:38 a.m., lock the doors, aim a gun at the ceiling, and set it off. Which is exactly what happened next. The shot rang out in the near silence of the cafe, piercing through the air like only a bullet can, sending a singing bell into the ears of all who were near it. A young child across the shop screamed and was instantly grabbed by his mother, who hid under a table with her back to the aisle, blocking anyone from getting her child. A barista dropped a porcelain cup out of shock, and it shattered on the floor, spilling hot liquid everywhere. Hattie cupped her hands over her mouth so as to not scream. Everybody hold up your phones, the man shouted, swinging his gun around. Hold them up high. It took no time at all for everyone to comply. Good. Now you. He pointed his gun at the man who was standing at the counter. Go and get them. Bring all the phones to me. The barista couldn't have been more than 17, and his hands shook as he went around to each table and collected the phones. That 17-year-old boy wasn't religious, but at that moment, he was praying. Praying that somebody, anybody, had called the police. It'll be okay, girls, Marissa whispered. Hattie could tell that she was trying to be strong, but she could also see the fear in her eyes when she glanced at the man with the gun. You four. The man pointed his gun in the direction of Hattie and her friends. And it was at that point that Harper began to cry. In front of the door. Stand. None of them knew what he meant, but he motioned for them to get up. And since he had a gun, they did what he asked. Then he did it again to the next table, making them stand in front of the windows. Soon, the whole store was stood in front of the glass entrance to the small cafe, including the little boy and his mother. While he was lining them up, the sound of sirens began, getting louder and louder, closer and closer, until they were too loud for Hattie to bear, and she covered her ears. Henry Walker, an amplified and slightly muffled voice, said from outside, "This is the New York City Police Department. We have the building surrounded. Come out with your hands up." Of course, Henry did no such thing, but waved his gun in the air, almost as if he was saying, "Don't try me." Next to Hattie, Carmen was holding her necklace so tightly that her knuckles were turning white, while her other hand was entwined with Harper's. Marissa's lips were moving, but there was no sound coming out. She was praying. Not a bad idea, Hattie thought. So she joined in. She closed her eyes and began to pray. As she did, words from the passages that the four girls had been going through came to mind. It was a popular verse, seen on stickers and coffee mugs, for such a time as this. Of course, the full verse was a bit more convicting, but that's the part that rang through Hattie's young mind as the minutes turned into hours. There was a clock on the wall behind the shop counter, and it served as a reminder of just how long these people had been standing here. 2:30, 3 hours, and the police had done nothing. Why aren't they just coming in? Someone asked to Hattie's left. We're blocking the door. They no doubt have a sniper on the roof, waiting to take the shot. But they can't, because they might hit one of us. She responded, her voice low. It had been too long standing here. She didn't want to do this, but she had put it off long enough. She took a deep breath, in and out. It always brought her peace, ever since she read that the name Yahweh was originally written without any vowels, and that in every breath you could hear it being said. Once she took a deep breath, she stepped forward, just a little bit. "What are you doing?" the guy with the gun asked, aiming his weapon at her chest. "Get back in line." "You don't look so good," Hattie said, her voice shaking ever so slightly. "Can I get you a cup of water?" Henry stared at her as he considered this, evaluating, calculating, risk assessing. Hattie was doing the same, taking in the blood soaking into the side of his shirt, the sweat dripping down his face, and the wideness of his eyes. "What's your name?" Henry narrowed his eyes at her. "Hadassah. People call me Hattie." No one called the girl by her real name these days, but she told him anyways. "I just thought that you might feel better if you had a cup of water. Sorry." "Hadassah. Yes, I think a cup of water would help me feel better. Thank you. Can you get one for me?" Hattie nodded, the weight of her decision settling in. No longer was she glanced over as just another piece of a horde, but now she had been called out. She was in this. It took all of her strength to take the next few steps. All of them brought her closer to a dangerous man who seemingly did not care about her safety. But there was still a little inkling in the back of her mind, a blossom of hope. It slowly bloomed as she poured some water from the tap into a plastic cup and brought it to him. That maybe, just maybe, this would all go to plan. Hope that they would all make it out of this alive. Henry, still suspicious, took the cup from Hattie, but said nothing. She looked back toward the front window, at all the other customers who were looking at her like a madman. Everyone watched with a sort of anticipation as he drank the entire cup greedily. "I need more, please, Hadassah." He handed the cup back to Hattie, and she filled it again and then gave it back. Once he had drunk his fill, he sent Hattie back to the front of the shop. 45 minutes passed. This time, Hattie's voice shook even more when she stepped forward and said, "Excuse me?" "What is it, Hadassah?" Henry asked. But he didn't point the gun at her. "I'm really very sorry to interrupt you like this, but I couldn't help but notice that you're bleeding. I'm training to be an EMT. I could patch you up, if you'd like." Now, if it had been almost any other person in the cafe who asked this, they would have been turned down. But Hattie had somehow managed to find favor in the eyes of this man, and therefore he nodded, beckoning her forward for the second time. "The first aid kit is behind the counter," Hattie said, pointing. He allowed her to go and get it, and when she had, the two of them sat down at one of the tables and got to work, while Hattie cut his shirt open so she could clean the wound and examine it. Henry kept his gun trained on the front of the store so that no one would try to escape while he was inconvenienced. "You've been kind to me, Hadassah." "Why?" Henry asked. Hattie pushed her glasses up with the back of her wrist. "I don't think that you're a very bad person," I think that sometimes people get mixed up in bad things, things that grab a hold of them and try to drag them down into the depths of darkness. Sometimes, when something's got a hold of someone, they can't get out on their own. Sometimes, we need to lend a hand to those who are wrestling with evil. And what if I really am a bad person? Henry responded. Well, then, that would make all of us. But there's a difference between a bad person and a bad person who's trying to be better. Hattie threaded some string on a surgical needle. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to help you with that. I want to be the hand that gives you what you need to win this fight with darkness. It was truly a miracle that she had said all that without tripping on her words or messing up with her stitches. She tied the string off and cut it, then lowered Henry's shirt back down. The injury wasn't what she had been expecting. Honestly, she thought he might have been shot, but it was still a deep scrape that needed patched up. And how would you do that? Henry asked, taking her wrist. When he looked at her, Hattie noticed that his eyes were different than they had been. They were searching instead of wandering, passionate instead of crazed. Help me, I mean. Well, it could start by the two of us sitting down and having a very serious conversation about what it means to be good or evil and how we can change at all. And then, depending on what you decide, it would probably end with you getting in one of those cop cars and atoning for what you've done up to this point. Henry nodded, and Hattie sat with him, silently asking for wisdom on what she should say. With a steadying breath, she decided to start by explaining the gospel to him, starting at the beginning, like she had been taught to do. She explained how God made the world, made us perfect, but then how we fell into sin. She explained separation from God and what that meant for us in our fallen state. And then she told Henry, who was listening intently, as though this was the only thing he ever had to think about. Henry, why are we here today? What made you decide to do this? Hattie asked when she had gone through her spiel. I got in with some rough people. We did something bad, he said, head in his hands. Police pulled up, and I didn't want to get caught, so I ran. Figured I could do what they do in the movies and negotiate my escape. Wasn't till I got in here that I remembered. Henry looked up at Hattie, eyes shining with tears. Bad guy never gets out of the situation in the movies. Okay. Hattie nodded. So what's next? Everyone goes home, Henry whispered, taking in a shaky breath. And I go to prison. Hattie stood and turned to the rest of the people in the cafe. And Henry put the gun on the table, away from him. Go home. Hattie told everyone along the window, smiling. Then she sat back down and faced the criminal before her, asked him how he was feeling, listened intentionally only to him, while a SWAT team came in and surrounded them both. Henry had long since broken down into tears and was shaking with sobs so hard that he couldn't even hold his hands up in surrender. He didn't protest when they put the cuffs on him and read him his rights, or when he got it in the back of a police car. When it was all over, Hattie put her head down in her arms on the table. She did not anticipate how exhausting it would be to evangelize at gunpoint. Her friends came back in and laid a blanket over her, matching the ones wrapped around them. Shock blankets, they were called. Hattie, that was so stupid and brave, Carmen said, sitting next to her. Are you okay? I'm fine, just doing what had to be done. Hattie responded, looking up from the table to her friends. We should go get ice cream, Harper said, then quickly amended, through the drive-through. Hattie snorted, laughing. I have ice cream in my dorm room. Come on. The four girls left the cafe and drove to the college, each separately praying a little prayer of gratitude on the drive over, and then finished their Bible study in the comfort of Hattie's living room, with bowls of chocolate ice cream next to them. When Henry's trial came 2 weeks later, Hattie attended. She watched him plead guilty and apologize to the people he had hurt. She didn't visit him in prison, but wrote him letters of encouragement every once in a while. When he wrote back that he had become a Christian, she shared it with everyone in her church. Overjoyed, after a year or so, the four girls decided to try the coffee shop again. And so now, every week for the past 10 weeks, Hattie, along with a new friend named Maya, has gone to the little family-owned cafe for a Bible study with a few of her friends from church. She'd walk in and hear the quiet, uplifting music and the gentle bustle of the few people inside, and smell the fresh ground coffee beans and vanilla. Then Maya and Hattie would see Carmen, who had dyed her blonde hair bright orange since last week, and Harper with her new engagement ring, and Marissa, who was now pregnant. And they'd sit and talk and read and pray, just as they expected to do for the next 10 weeks. Ambition. Arms up, the man said. A smile touched my lips, and I did as I was told. I knew that I'd fucked up. There was no denying it. This meeting was a formality, not a death sentence. I lifted my arms lightly above my head. My suit coat hung along my shoulders like torn-back sails. The man patted me down, unholstered my gun, and tucked it along the back of his waistband, and I looked at him with a questioning glance. The nerve of this one, I thought, but remained silent, smelling the wafting cigar smoke pouring out of Father's office. You'll get it back when business is concluded. This your only piece? He asked, sizing me up. I nodded and tucked in my shirt along the waist again, shimmied my pants into a better position. The man stood aside, gesturing for me to enter. My hand wrapped around the brass doorknob, and the thick wood creaked inward, and all at once the smell of Father's cigars hit me harder than a ton of bricks. My eyes watered. Making my way inside through the haze reminded me of the night we went down to the docks to pitch the body of Lenny Chesnetter over into the dark water. Not me, Lenny's voice echoed in my mind. I didn't do nothing. I swear it. Nothin', I tell ya. The gunshot always sounds louder when it isn't you pulling the trigger. I entered the lavish office, my father sitting behind his desk like an old king at his throne. And to the chair along the right of the desk, my brother, turning his head to look at me. Even for all the years since the day of his automobile accident, I can never get used to the sight of that scar. A jagged line running along the left temple toward the middle of the cheek. Have a seat, Father said. I listened to my shoes clacking across the hardwood, listening to the sounds of the door shutting behind me, but didn't have to look back to know that the man outside had done it. Other scents were mingling in the air, Father's cologne, as well as my brother's. One of the housekeepers had set up a bouquet in this dark room, as if it had seemed to mask the constantly wafting cigar smoke drifting up toward the ceiling. It didn't. I found the open chair to my father's right diagonal from his spot behind the desk and took the wide way around, pulling the chair back so that the three of us now sat almost in a perfect triangle. I did this because whatever bad water had been spilled between my brother and me, I wasn't in a fighting mood. Maybe it was the Irish in me, some instinctual thing to wanna fuck strange women and fight all the goddamn time. My brother scoffed at this, gusting his air, and flapped his coat back to the center of his torso, over the velvet blue vest beneath. A single gold chain clipped to one of the buttonholes. The same pocket watch I gave him for Christmas 2 winters ago. I sat with ease and crossed my right leg over the other. Let's get down to it, boys, Father said. Which one of you did it? There was silence for a moment. My brother and I exchanged a glance, not saying a word. All right, if that's how you want to do it, he said, pulling back one of the desk drawers and withdrawing a Colt 1911 .45 semi-automatic pistol. He thumbed back the hammer and pointed at me. Which one of you sons of bitches killed Jimmy Booker? Oh, you think I fucking did it, do ya? I asked with a sneer. Go on then, shoot me. Get it over with, I said, resting my hands along the armrests. In truth, I didn't give a shit one way or the other. I looked over at my brother, trying to read his expression, but he sat there with a calm that I'd only ever seen a few times before. For once, I was the loose cannon here. For once, I was the one losing my mouth when what I needed to do was shut the fuck up. Why don't you point the gun there? I said, pointing at my brother. He's always the one stirring up problems in this family. Put one right between his fucking eyes and let's get this thing over with. The sound of the gunshot was deafening. I flinched at the recoil and, to my amazement, realized that I'd still been alive. My eyes widened as a smile crept onto my face. I looked at Father. The gun had been pointed upward, and the muzzle drifted a thin line of smoke from the barrel up to the ceiling, where it mixed with the wafting cigar smoke. "Are you fucking crazy?" I asked, sitting forward. My foot dropped to the hardwood floor with a thud. "You know how many coppers walk these streets?" I asked, squinting at him. "I own the cops," Father said with a smile, and set the gun down atop the desk there, where it sat pointing between both of us, and not at one of us in particular. Father picked up his cigar and gently rounded the ash from the lit end, brought it to his lips where he bit down lightly, perching it along the corner of his teeth. "I'm gonna ask you both again. Which one of you did it?" he asked, drawing on the chewed bit of his cigar, with a wash of gray smoke drifting down from his parted lips. His wrinkled eyes studied us one by one. "Does it matter?" my brother chimed in. "That guy was a crook. Bookie or not, he's been stealing from us for years." "Not us," he said. "From me. And I know that he's been doing it. But what both of you don't know is that Jimmy Booker has been fixing bets for the better part of the last 2 decades. It was only a matter of time before we took the hammers to his kneecaps, but I would have let him live. You smug prick." Father leaned forward and stared at brother. "Scraps. That's what he took from me. Scraps. Like a dog. And one of you 2 numbskulls whacked him before I could set him down and get the truth out of him good and proper." Father sat back. "Besides, nobody gets snuffed out in this town without my saying so. Not even my dumb fuck petulant rat children prancing around like they're doing the Lord's work." "Is that what you thought you were doing? The Lord's work?" He slammed his fist down along the top of the wooden desk, killing a man in broad daylight. 2 days before the race of the fucking century. He stood quickly, the chair behind him falling back as he towered over the desk in front of us. "Do you 2 idiots have any idea how much fucking money I was going to make off of that race?" 55 large, I said. I knew I'd seen the books. "How much money did you take him for, anyway?" Father asked, pressing his knuckles down along the top of the desk. "How much money did you recover from Jimmy's safe?" "All of it," I said. "How much?" he asked again. His pupils were so large that you couldn't see the blues there anymore. Only the blackened coals for eyes where color had once been. "We're wasting time," my brother said absently. He had begun running his fingers along the scar across the left temple beside his eye. He did this, of course, an old gambling tell of his when he bluffed. We had another bookie lined up, South Side, Giovanni's man. My father was stunned into silence. He turned and picked up his expensive leather chair and set it upright once more, collapsing into it. Let me get this straight. You killed my man so that you could use the Italians. Do you think because we have some truce with those Goombas, you can take out one of our own and fix bets with another organization? Looks like you boys are trying to run this family. Father rubbed his eyes, his cigar still perched in his teeth along the corner of his mouth. He breathed in deep, the cigar cherry lighting up the inside of his palm, and he pulled it from his lips, curling an index finger around it, wet and gnarled. His hand perched along the armrest, a thick line of smoke wafting from the end of the half-chewed cigar. You boys will be the death of me, he said with his eyes closed. He turned to look first at my brother and then at me. What gave you smartasses the bright idea to fix bets with the Italians? My brother glanced at me and then back to Father. Because it's our time to move on their territory. The Italians are weak. They lost 3 good men to bank robberies, another 2 to the bombing last month. My father's eyes glinted. Between the 3 of us, none of us saying the thing there beneath the surface. That father had been orchestrating the bombings. There had been dozens in the months past. He'd been killing off the Italians from whatever shadows that he'd been operating in, beneath the guise of a truce all this time. The bombs that had been planted, the coppers tipped off about the bank robberies, was only a fraction of the work that had been done. Explosives were planted in engine rooms, aboard steamers, docked in Boston Harbor. Prized fighters dying suddenly from arsenic. There was a level of depravity not spoken of within this room, and between the 3 of us, nobody had said a word. Why, Jimmy? Father asked. Why in all of this did you take out my very own fucking bookie? I sat forward, an elbow cocked behind me along the armrest. Because Jimmy wasn't who you thought he was. I stared across the desk. My brother shifted beside me. Jimmy wasn't just fixing bets for you. He was fixing them for the Italians at the same time. He might have been taking crumbs from you over the years, but he's been raking it in hand over fist with the Italians for a decade or more. Jimmy is a distant cousin to the Giovanni syndicate, married to one of our very own. How do you know all this? Father asked, raising an eyebrow. You're not the only one who bribes cops, Brother said. There was laughter then. Father sat back against the leather chair and stared for a time at the ceiling, running his thick fingers through his thinning red hair. Word on the street is Jimmy's been letting bits and pieces of information slip past our lines for years. How do you think the Italians were able to take the south side so quickly? Father, puzzled by this, shook his head and sat up once more. He centered himself behind the desk and laced his fingers. He seemed to know without knowing. "What do you suppose we do about all of this?" he asked, looking at me. I looked at my brother, who finally smiled. "We know the name of their horse," brother said. "Consider it a parting gift from Jimmy." The next day had been one of the fairer ones of the season, almost pleasant. The sun was shining brilliantly overhead. I squinted through my tinted glasses, my cap tucked low over the eyes. I stood in the open air, smelling the vibrant scents of the women in attendance all around, their floral dresses puffed beneath the small of their waists like delicate flowers, concealing something even sweeter there beneath. My eyes moved across the sea of faces there, the onlookers waiting for the next race to begin, and with the gunshot that rang out, a few around were startled. But the next round of horses were padding down the track. Our horse wasn't among them, but was the next to follow. So I had little interest in this race, except for the equestrian appeal of horses galloping along their curved track, with each of their jockeys whipping their hindquarters in feverish gait. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause. The leader among them, a tan beauty, with a red-jacketed jockey standing above and hunched over the bobbing head of the horse that he rode. They crossed the finish line, the crowd erupting into feverish applause. "Ours is next," my brother said beside me. All was taken care of. I needn't bother with going over the morning's events, as I'd known well into the mid-afternoon what had transpired. Giovanni now lay along a cold slab downtown, the mortician sifting through the gunshot wounds that had been inflicted by the Tommy guns that took out their entire entourage as they approached their prize-winning horse, named Winn-Dixie. Our man inside had seen to poisoning Winn-Dixie with enough tranquilizers to kill a horse, to pun, but we'd be there to watch it as it happened. The horses had left the track, their riders collecting their wreaths of flowers before padding along the high walls to adoring and cheering fans. "You're certain it's been taken care of?" I asked, looking at him, my eyes trailing over the scar along the side of his face. "It's done," he said, without looking at me, feeling my eyes running along the course of that jagged line. I focused forward once more. "Father will be pleased," I said. There wasn't anything else to say. This was the first in many events moving forward. The decision that we were consciously making in a coup to take out our flesh and blood and run the organization the way that we saw fit. The world was moving right along beyond the cozy place that Father had built and remained. This was the world of the steam invention, industrialization, changing political landscapes, and even grander concepts that eluded Father. It seemed that in just an evening's pass, the world had left him there, a fossil amongst the living, and that no world would welcome his old ideals and aging perspective. I glanced at my brother now, not knowing how long he'd been staring at me. Both of us knew. When this is all over, you'll take the north, and I'll take the south side, he said. I focused my attention on the track before us and nodded. I would take over my father's estate, and my brother would take control of the Italians. Boston was ours for the taking. There was a long pause between us, waiting for the next race to begin. A stir of excitement amongst the onlookers. And then the gunshot came. The gates opened. Our horse, Lil Red 1, roared past the others, but at the third gate, Winn-Dixie trotted forward in hopefulness, keeping a fair speed at first before arching its head backward and falling onto the ground with its back legs splayed as it rolled to its side, knocking its rider from its back. Everyone jumped to their feet and stood watching the downed rider, Winn-Dixie, writhing in pain, kicking its legs beneath it as it lay upon its side, bobbed its head as it scraped gently along the ground there. Everyone around murmuring with feverish anxiety. Winn-Dixie, panting, kicked its feet a few more times, stopped, heaved, and let out the last of its breath. Lil Red 1 crossed the finish line in first place, without the other riders knowing what had happened. I glanced at my brother. The crook of a small smile touched his lips. I looked back to Winn-Dixie, forgetting all about our own prized horse winning the race, and stared with wide eyes in horror at the fallen stud with his rider knelt beside it. One small hand rested along the rib cage of the dead animal. "That settles it," brother said. He turned to look at me, and I to him, finally, forcing my eyes from Winn-Dixie. "Pleasure doing business with you," he said, extending a hand. I shook it, feeling the embrace of my brother there amongst a crowded bandstand of race enthusiasts. For a moment, I felt the warmth of his hand, a subtle reminder of the man that he was, a handshake with someone that I loved, and then felt the cold and calculated business transaction that had just concluded. "Till we see each other again," I said. We parted there. He took his leave and mingled with the crowd beyond, making his way down the steps, rounded the corner, and was gone. That was the last time that I'd spoken to my brother aloud. Not long after the events of that day, my father had been fatally stabbed to death late one evening. Of course, this was part of the plan all along, though I had never been the one holding the knife. It was my brother, releasing us unto the splinters of this syndicate. It wasn't long before the fires started, as his men had been ordered to take out the Italians in force. The gunshots, for a time, had been frequent and unrelenting, often in broad daylight, but skirmishes clamored through the nights in those early days. only rumors of these prominent Italian family members slain in cold blood, or that of the houses that had been burned in the early morning hours while they slept, cozied in their beds. My brother is always the benefactor, or presumed to have been. As I sat in Father's study, swirling a brandy, I'd not had the slightest care. My brother, unbeknownst to him, had been working for me all along, doing the dirty work with blood-stained hands, as the plans that I'd set into motion had finally come to pass. "Cheers," I said, raising a toast. Confessions of the Wicked. Trigger warning. This story contains mentions of suicide, murder, SA, and drug abuse to whomever it may concern in the future. I must confess, Lisa clutched the letter tightly in her trembling hands, her heart racing as she tried to process the words before her. Each sentence felt like a distant echo, her mind struggling to comprehend the reality they presented. The ink on the paper blurred into a haze as she stared at it as if it were a passage from a dramatic novel rather than a message meant for her. One shaky hand dropped to the desk, the wooden surface cool against her palm, while the other instinctively covered her mouth in a futile attempt to stifle a gasp. A powerful wave of dread surged through her, leaving her muscles taut and aching with anxiety. Feeling an urgent need to escape the suffocating atmosphere, she pivoted on her toes, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps, and made a fast beeline for the door, desperate to put distance between herself and the shocking revelation contained in that letter. Her mind raced wildly, grappling with the cruel reality of working in the very prison where her brother had been a devoted inmate for the last 10 years. The stark, cold walls echoed with memories of their shared laughter, now replaced by a haunting sense of despair. Every day, she poured herself into her work, driven to the brink of insanity as she navigated the complex legal system, desperately seeking a way to free him. Yet, in the quiet moments, a dark shadow loomed over her thoughts, the chilling possibility that all her efforts might still fall short in saving him from the fate the letter she held had predicted. She remembered the moment she first heard about her brother's arrest in South Korea, a wave of despair crashing over her. Confusion and heartbreak gripped her as she tried to fathom why he had been taken from her. In those early days, she had poured herself into studying the laws of both Korea and the United States, desperate to understand the gravity of the 24 murder charges and 2 counts of attempted murder he faced. Late nights spent poring over legal texts had become her refuge, each page turning fueled by an unwavering determination to bring him back and piece together the chaos that had upended their lives. The murders occurred in the United States, which ultimately led Lisa's family to seek refuge in South Korea. They were fleeing the shadows cast by a chilling truth. Richard was a serial killer, Disturbingly, Lisa's parents were aware of Richard's dark nature long before the FBI uncovered his gruesome activities. He had confided in them, revealing his violent tendencies and chilling declaration that he would continue his spree regardless of the consequences, even if apprehended. Richard's descent into darkness began at a young age. When he was just 17, he was discovered covered in blood at a crime scene, a scene that would mark his third murder. This incident forced him to come clean about his heinous actions. Under pressure from law enforcement, Richard detailed each horrifying crime he committed, recounting events with a disturbing calmness, as if sharing mundane stories instead of the tragedies he inflicted. For Lisa's family, the awareness of his twisted mind and the violent past they were escaping only deepened the turmoil they felt in their new home. Their parents seriously thought about turning him into the police, but then they saw Lisa. How could they abandon their youngest? Their son had taken lives. It's infuriating to think they were so desperate to protect him that they convinced themselves he could get away with it, claiming self-defense. And if that failed, they had the audacity to believe he could plead insanity. It's maddening. They were determined not to let their family suffer the consequences of his monstrous actions. They had fought hard for their so-called American dream, and now they were willing to ignore the reality of murder just to keep it intact. I've committed some really questionable acts that I have come to wholeheartedly regret. Some may ask why I even did such a thing. The answer will always be that I do not know myself. You can call it an insatiable urge. Lisa stood before her brother's cell, her heart pounding in her chest as she fought to steady her breath. Each inhalation came in shaky increments, a desperate attempt to keep her presence unnoticed in the cold, dimly lit hallway. She searched for some sort of implication to give truth to that letter. All that was in the cell were her brother's two very active cellmates. They slept serenely, coddled up like children against the wall of their respective bunks. As she tightly gripped the cold metal bar of the cell, an electrifying tension filled the air, causing the inmates to stir in panic. It was as if a primal instinct had been awakened within them, leading them to believe they were suddenly thrust into a perilous struggle for survival. Much like the brutal realities one often faces in the dark corners of the slums. The brawny Ginger had his eyes wide and red with irritation. He almost flew from his frame from the banging that Lisa's small palm had brought to life with a touch. The other, smaller but still muscular, had softly turned himself over, almost unbothered by the verbal intrusion caused by the one female CO showing up at their block in the dead of night. There was only a lustful glare there. She sighed and glared at them, her stare demanding to see the last person in the shadows. She hoped from the bottom of her heart that her brother would creep up from behind the twin bunks. A silence made static pass through her ears, and her brother didn't emerge. Instead, that small inmate crept from his laid-down position and mirrored Lisa at the entrance to the cell. He breathed hard with a tangy output, showering Lisa's face with disgust. She scoffed as she pressed on her heels, steadily taking a step back. To Lisa, the inmate in front of her looked like a starved beast. She often saw the man in front of her teaching other inmates how to cope with their new life in prison. As an inmate himself, he should not have had the right to do so, but his compassion and leadership led people to look up to him. He was honestly the sweetest man that she could claim she met in prison. Even her brother had more spine than muscle. One day, Lisa decided to ask him why he was still in prison. He explained that same night that he received a life sentence after being caught. He admitted that when he was free, he kidnapped and tortured an uncomfortable amount of transient women. He said something along the lines of, "God has no respect for harlots." Maybe he was insane, but he claimed he was a respectful man of the Lord. In the state he stood in now, he was the pure antonym of the nice guy persona he usually shows. His eyes rested half-lidded and bloodshot. His gaze lingered on parts of her body with an unsettling desire. Although his hands gripped hard on the bars on either side of her face, he looked ready to topple over with a single misstep. He mumbled to say something, but she was only able to understand the slurring of an accused drunk. Realizing her presence made no difference to anyone in the vicinity, she sucked in as much as she could and ran off with that breath held within her chest, the letter Lt as if it was coming true. I want to see the chaos from the front seat. Such a massacre has been my dream since becoming a person of power. I can do it, so why not? For 25 years, I have gotten away with enough wrongdoings to make the boy M killing tonight look like a saint. He's been a serial killer since childhood, but he's merciful in the sense he ends their suffering. However, Lisa rushed through the halls with her hands clasped around her keys. She glided past cell after cell with nothing standing out to her until she heard a muffled bang come from the prison's watchtower, cantered in the lunch area on the first floor. She crept up to the door and reached for the knob. A sharp pain ran through the muscles in her wrist. Her eyes closed for the moment of impact before she opened them to see her brother in nothing but his worn-out, once white, prison boxers. His eyes were wide and the same shaded red as the other inmate she had seen up close. His entire face was morphed into fear itself. Lisa had never seen him look like this. Richard fell on top of her, breathing as if he just escaped a nasty waterboarding session. Except he wasn't wet. He was covered in oil. She froze in place, a fathomable confusion filling her expression. The room grew more tense as Richard only stared for a moment and opened his mouth, inhaling and howling. He then pushed off Lisa's chest and sprinted away, never turning to look back. His destination seemed unclear. It just looked like he wanted to get as far away as possible. At first, she found the cowardice retreat understandable, because it made sense. The only time a prisoner would get to enter the watchtower was if they were in trouble and about to receive some sort of punishment. My morals have morphed over the years. I'm not an old man going senile. I have come to embrace the cruelty I wish to inhabit, although I still recognize that this is wrong. I want to watch the hell burn from its core. I understand that this is an unforgivable madness. The ending of the letter resurfaced in her brain as the warden walked out from the shadows of the tower. He smiled widely, towering over her in uniform pants and his uniform boots. He lifted his hand with his gun pointed to his head. She stared in horror as her brother's howling continued like a dog whistle. Before she could catch up with herself, the gun was fired and a bullet went straight through the warden's skull. So I write this letter to let you know that I will be taking my own life after have fun. And I take the boy's. His body fell limp, and the alarms finally took away her silence. She stared at the body, and the next 4 hours of her life passed in a blur. She was taken into emergency care and treated for substance abuse, just like everyone else in the prison. Even though she had accidentally saved her brother's life that night, it was already too many deaths, too late. The world had already been spoon-fed the confession of the wicked, the inheritance. Christ, Beck snapped, giving a start. Before her stood a tall man in a butler's suit. His lips curled, and he lifted a sardonic brow as he gave a small, mocking bow. Her eyes moved from his oddly fat feet up his short, sturdy legs, where the tail of his coat hung below his knees, and moved back and forth in the slight breeze. His hips were narrow, but his long body widened into a thick paunch. Then his chinless head squatted on shoulders, no wider than his girth. His long, thin nose occupied his face. "You frightened the bejesus out of me. Who the hell are you?" she asked. "Who is this? And why is he inside my aunt's house? And why is he dressed in a black suit straight from the early 20th century?" His smile widened into a toothy grin. "Falstaff, the butler, at your service, ma'am." His hooded eyes blinked slowly, and he bowed again. The man was repulsive to look at, but Beck was drawn into the dark depths of his strange eyes. With an effort, she broke their gaze. Auntie had a butler? She never said. Over the years, Beck had kept in contact via letters. Aunt Bess didn't own a computer. And now Auntie was gone, presumed dead. That's what the police said. It was obvious to Beck that they had given up hope of finding her great-aunt. Falstaff cleared his throat to reclaim her wandering attention. The left side of his upper lip curled in a smile. Or was that a snarl? I think, if you check, you will find mention of me in Bess's will. She and I became very close. She was alone. He paused. And lonely. What the hell is this guy insinuating? Auntie allowed you to call her Bess? She swallowed hard. Surely not. As I said, she was lonely. She felt deserted. She loved me. His lips opened over his large teeth in an approximation of a cheeky grin. Like a son. She wanted to change her will. But before she could, she disappeared. It's not true, Beck gasped. She would never. She loved me. I loved her. I'm her niece, grand niece, whatever, who never visited her. I was overseas. If it's any business of yours. Why was she defending herself against the hired help? What he was saying was preposterous. Beck gritted her teeth. I'm her niece. I'm blood. Yes, blood. Falstaff blinked slowly. Was he goading her? Blood. So much thicker than water. He licked his lips. As you say, whatever. The will was not changed, and I remain. Falstaff the butler, at your service, ma'am. He clicked his heels and gave another little bow, stepped back, and gestured for her to enter. She ignored him. She didn't need his invitation. I was hoping to revisit the old place alone, so you can go back to wherever butlers go, and I'll look after myself. A wry smile tugged at her mouth. I sound just like Great Aunt Bess at her autocratic best. An apology automatically rose to her lips. To hell with that. Just who does this guy think he is? Freaking creep. Why am I so jittery? Her tongue flicked out over her red lips, but she kept her gaze steady. The house is mine. Falstaff's smile disappeared. His nostrils flared, and his coal-black, unblinking eyes stared down his long nose. Beck lifted her chin and stared back. Prick. With head and bunk stiff, he turned on his heel into the gloomy interior. What's with the fancy dress costume? She demanded. He turned around, the movement a slither of insolence. Oh, just something our Aunt Bess liked to do for guests, he replied. How dare he? Our Aunt Bess, indeed. She liked to relive history. It gave our visitors a bit of a thrill. Tourists are stupid. There it was again, that infuriating superiority and mockery. We could, and did, frighten the fools with tall tales of hauntings and death. Aunt Bess and I enjoyed the game. Solid, sensible Aunt Bess playing dress-up? Surely not. I want to be alone. Falstaff bowed smartly as he replied, "Perhaps Madam would like me to bring her bags in. Shall I put them in the master bedroom?" "Sure. Why not?" She tossed him the car keys, which he snapped up with his left hand in a strangely smooth and agile movement for someone who looked so awkward in his own skin. He moved forward. She backpedaled as he passed, surprised and confused by a fleeting apprehension. Shaking herself, she stepped onto the black and white marble tiles of the foyer. Automatically, her hand reached to the right and flicked the switch. The brassy brightness of electric light pushed the shadows back. The old Dutch lamp still hung above the entrance, but an ugly black cord snaked through the decorative fretwork and into the base where it connected to a bulb, instead of the genteel neglect of her memory. The harsh electricity showed dilapidated antique furniture and fading decor. She threw her red bag onto the armchair, making a bloody splash against the faded green velvet. She kicked off her red stilettos, making a matching puddle on the floor. She noticed a dimmer switch and twisted the knob. "That's better." A smile curved Beck's mouth as she gazed around. Her mother had brought 8-year-old Becky here to live, just for a few weeks, until after the divorce. Becky ended up staying for 36 months, during which, under the generous care of her forthright great-aunt, she blossomed. Aunt Bess taught her that you could love without anger, manipulation, and shouting. Beck bit her lip to prevent the tears. "Be sensible. Auntie was very old. She had a good innings." Beck heard the old lady's rusty voice. "Buck up, girlie. That's life. Look to the future. Youch!" Beck wrinkled her nose. What was that disagreeable, swampy smell? She spun slowly around. A veil of dust made everything appear out of focus. "Hang on. I thought that guy said he was the butler. Why is everything so dusty?" Moving further down the hall, she said aloud, "Lazy bastard. He is so gone when I get settled." Thud, thump, thud, thump, thud, thump. Beck froze, heart pulsing painfully in her throat. She turned and saw the butler's legs disappear around the curve of the stairwell. Had he heard her? Too bad. Perhaps it will improve his attitude. His tread thudded resentfully into the dusty carpet as the back corner of the valise thumped the stair. Thud, thump. Beck laughed and returned to exploring her surroundings. "Bet the bossy old broad's turning in her grave," she murmured, running a well-manicured finger tipped in blood over the arm of the settee. A photograph of the fabulous old Tartar, looking her imperious best, glared down at Beck from high on the wall. She always appeared fearsome until you got to know her, Beck thought with affection. She squinted at the picture in the golden gloom. Good grief, it could be me, she thought. The Aunt Bess in the picture was younger than when Beck knew her. Straight-backed, strong and indomitable in her khaki riding habit. She held a rifle over her left shoulder and rested one leather-booted foot on the head of a dead lion. I was so happy here, Beck said, addressing the portrait. I did love you, you know. I'm so sorry if you felt I neglected you. She swallowed back her tears. Where did you disappear to, Auntie? I'll find you, I promise, or die trying. Her eyes moved down the hall. Instead of snarling from the wall by the side of the photo, a once beautiful lion's head stared up at the ceiling from atop a glass-fronted credenza. Just another tattered remnant of the past. Fierce eyes, now dull with dusty cataracts. Its roar inaudible. Back then, timid as Becky was, she had been fascinated by the ferocious head, mesmerized by such a powerfully alive image of death. Come on, touch her, child, Aunt Bess said. I killed her myself while Gunter and I were on safari. Must be 15 years ago. She won't bite, I promise. Her great-aunt placed Becky's small hand on the coarse, furry head. Oh, Becky breathed. A real lioness. Magnificent, isn't she? Aunt Bess's stern face lit up, and her smoky laughter boomed through the house. To the left of the credenza stood the same hall table Beck remembered from her childhood, topped by the same glass tank containing the same dead reptiles. A baby crocodile and two stumpy-tailed blue-tongue lizards still lurked in the semi-dark. At 8, she had no knowledge of anything other than the small, untidy city unit where she and her parents lived. How exciting this strange house had seemed to her. What wonders it held. What are they? Becky asked. Her great-aunt took some pains with her explanations, enjoying the chance to educate. Becky's attention wandered as her eyes explored the other photos and memorabilia on the walls. Come with me. Aunt Bess grabbed the little girl's hand and led her to a door hidden behind the staircase. Open it, she commanded. Becky looked up. Go ahead, her aunt encouraged, her eyes promising excitement and adventure. Becky's hand turned the large metal knob and pulled the door's heaviness wide. They descended into the cool cellar. Along with the root vegetables and pantry shelves loaded with preserves and pickles, stood a long glass case containing an enormous saltwater crocodile, caught mid-snap. That's the croc that got my Gunter. I plugged the bastard right between the eyes, I did, Auntie said. Too late to save Gunter, though. She paused. In the end, I couldn't bear to have the horrid creature on display upstairs. But neither can I get rid of him. He is my last contact with my darling Gunter. They are one. The creature was repulsively fascinating. He had a long snout, hooded eyes, and a wide head jammed onto his body, which widened out around his middle and tapered down to a long tail. Becky squatted down near the huge reptile's head. Its open maw was full of vicious-looking teeth. His eyes looked alive. He was hungry. He was angry. He wanted revenge. Arg! Becky jumped up and hid her face in Aunt Bess's skirt. What on earth's got into you, child? He's alive. He wants to eat me. Her aunt wrapped her in a warm embrace and gave a laugh. You silly goose. He is quite dead, I assure you. Come on, time for cordial and cake. Beck could hear her aunt's deep laughter and booming voice echoing up from the past. A shiver of apprehensive excitement tingled her spine. Is the beast still down there? She turned to her left. Beck sucked air, felt her bladder contract. Falstaff stood in the doorway, watching her. He raised his eyebrows in benign inquiry. She ignored him. The cellar door opened easily this time. She flicked on the light. A single bare bulb dangling from the cobwebbed ceiling struggled to throw off the gloom. It moved in the slight breeze, creating weird, moving shadows. Musty air spiraled up to her, redolent with memories. The rough, strong feel of Aunt Bess's hand, the smell of earthy vegetables, the sharpness of pickling vinegar, and the sight of that amazing creature, so dangerous, so dead. With a dry mouth, Beck ducked her head and thudded down the dusty, wooden stairs. The glass case was empty. The lid hung to one side. The outline of the creature was clear in the dust, as though he had only recently vacated his glass coffin. Where had he gone? Beck's nostrils flared, assailed by a fetid, swampy miasma. She searched the shadows, half expecting to find the reptile hiding in their depths. Idiot, she mocked herself. A noise rustled behind her. She swung to face the stairs. A shadow stepped forward. Jesus, Falstaff. She clenched her hands and spoke through her teeth. You nearly gave me a heart attack. I am sorry I startled you. Falstaff's oily obsequiousness belied the glint in his dark orbs. He gave a snort, showed his teeth. Beck stared into the reptilian black of his expressionless, hooded eyes. Her pupils dilated. She found herself unable to move, unable to think. He stepped closer, brought up his hand. Cool leather caressed her face. The cobwebbed light flickered, giving his movements a jerky, surreal effect. She smelled the earthy, overpowering maleness of him. Her senses reeled. Time held its breath. What you want? Beck forced the words from her constricted throat. Just you, he grunted. My Becky. She moved her head from side to side. No, you've always known. You, the last remnant of Bess, Falstaff hissed. He lifted his other hand, placed it at the base of her throat, where her carotid pounded irregularly. His grip tightened. Goose flesh prickled Beck's spine. Her heart fluttered in its bony cage. She couldn't withdraw her gaze, couldn't move. He brought ice-cold lips down. His fetid breath entered her lungs. The flickering light snapped off. Just another dead girl. Underwater. Trigger warning. Implications of death, violence, and sexual harassment. By the time the fisherman finds me, I will have been dead for 33 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds. 18 hours since the police declared me missing. 15 hours since Zoe told my biology teacher that my tent was empty, that I hadn't returned from the party we'd snuck out to the night before. Careful, quiet, every twig a possible snitch. It was exhilarating, our hearts pounding, the smell of pine and seaweed thick in the air, and the moon a perfectly curved sickle. Zoe held my sweaty hand and didn't let go until we'd passed the tents and joined the others by the lake. The music on someone's phone was turned down just low enough for us to make out Billie Eilish's raspy voice. One of the guys offered us a beer, kept cool in the pitch-black, lurking water. I remember thinking I couldn't tell where the lake ended and the forest began. The first article, published by a local newspaper, reads, "Promising high school student missing after night swim in lake." Shortly after, the Water Rescue Service and Fire Brigade take over the search. Dogs comb the area, their noses trailing through the damp earth. A human chain forms, people moving slowly through the woods, eyes scanning for any sign of me. Even a helicopter hovers overhead, its whirring blades slicing through the heavy, charged air. The search drags on for hours, stretching into the twilight. Yet the woods remain silent. The police begin to ask questions. When was she last seen? What was she wearing? Had she been drinking? Did she seem out of character? Angry? Sad? Suicidal? No, no, and no. She was singing. She was dancing. She seemed happy. When the fisherman finds my body, miles away from where I was last seen, certainty sets in. The autopsy reveals a hematoma on my head and purple spots behind my ears. The coroners examine the water in my lungs and confirm that I wasn't dead before entering the water. I died by drowning. My classmates are questioned again. Zoe claims to have left early, while I stayed behind with her twin brother, Tom, who has been in love with me since middle school. Tom's behavior strikes the police as odd. He insists he barely spoke to me, despite people seeing us leave the party together for a few minutes. When my body is examined, traces of Tom's skin are found on my clothes, trapped between the fabric layers. Still, Tom sticks to his story, perhaps because the truth would embarrass him for some reason. Or maybe he's just afraid of the questions that would follow. and the scrutiny that might come with them. Tom is right, you know, in the broadest sense. We really only exchanged 3 or 4 sentences that night, but only because Tom's mouth was otherwise occupied with me. I had enjoyed every second of it, and looking back, I wish I'd given him a real chance, but I was too worried about what other people might think. So, as usual, I brushed him off, leaving him to walk away from the party, feeling hurt. Cassandra insists she heard Zoe and me arguing that night, just before Zoe headed back to the campsite. According to her, we were fighting over Tom. Of course she would say that. What else would 2 girls argue about, if not a boy? Cassandra even claims that Zoe pushed me, though Zoe denies it vehemently. She denies discussing Tom at all, insisting it was about something else, something that wouldn't come to light until much later, when our biology teacher became a suspect. But Cassandra holds firm to her version. The thing about Cassandra is that she's always been a shadow, the kind of girl whose name teachers forget after 2 weeks of spring break. Kelly, Cindy, Carrie. Something with a Z, though, right? So, when she finally gets the chance to talk to the police and be part of the investigation, she jumps at it. Unfortunately, Cassandra isn't much help to the investigators. She leaves the party at 2 a.m. and just 40 minutes before I die, leaving me alone with a group of guys who've brought along some tranquilizers. Sitting next to them felt like being stuck in a fever dream, where Jacques Derrida explains quantum physics at a frat party. At some point, I decided it was time to head back. One of the guys casually asked if I needed someone to walk with me, and I said yes, but no one moved. I glanced back, the campsite faintly visible through the cold, white light filtering through the pines. It was only a few meters away, just beyond the trees. I'd walked this path for days, never once feeling threatened by the shadows in the bushes. But tonight, that sinking feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Still, I refused to be that girl, the one who got scared at every creak in the dark, the one who needed someone to hold her hand for a few steps. So I stood up and said I'd walk alone. Instead of sticking to the dark trail, though, I decided to take a small detour along the riverbank, a bit longer, a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit safer. One of the guys told me to text him when I made it to my tent, but when I didn't, no one even noticed. 16 days after my death, suspicion begins to shift toward our biology teacher. Devin, one of my classmates, reveals that he had felt ill that night and went looking for the teacher's tent, only to find it empty. Soon after, the teacher's behavior takes a strange turn. He starts making inconsistent statements that don't add up. One day, he calls Zoe into his office after class, where he insists that his earlier proposal to her before the trip had been nothing but a joke. She understood that, right? It was sarcasm, he says, claiming that what he really meant was that if she wanted to improve her grades, she should consider attending a tutoring service. And this is where Cassandra steps in for the final time. She confesses that she visited our biology teacher after the party and that they went to the boathouse, where, according to her, nothing bad happened. He was just there for me. The biology teacher is immediately suspended, but the case against him has nothing to do with mine, as Cassandra's alibi clears him. Meanwhile, the suspicions surrounding Zoe and Tom are too weak to pursue. My case remains unsolved, and eventually, people begin to accept the idea that it was just a tragic accident, that I must have hit my head when I jumped into the water. They agree that I seemed unhappy, not just that night, but in general, and that my relationship with my parents, who expected me to excel in everything, was strained. Perhaps the pressure had finally got to her. It's all unsatisfying, of course. Unsatisfying for the local magazine, whose updates eventually dry up. Unsatisfying for the police, left with yet another unsolved case on their desk. Unsatisfying for my parents, who, decades later, will say in an interview that not a day goes by that they don't think of their little girl. Maybe one day, a classmate will write a college essay about my case, reflecting on how it taught them that life can end in an instant. Maybe my story will end up on a true crime podcast. Or perhaps Netflix will stretch it into a tightly structured 8-episode miniseries where my body is discovered just 3 minutes in. Enough time for viewers to decide if they'll keep watching. Or maybe none of this happens, and I'll fade away like countless other women who are silenced every day simply for being born the wrong sex. It doesn't matter who profits from my story. It doesn't even matter if they eventually find the 2 men I crossed paths with on my way back to the campsite in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of this matters, because in the end, I'm just another dead girl underwater, witness to my own funeral. The darkness came first, then awareness. Not the gentle awakening from sleep, but a violent snap into consciousness, like a circuit suddenly completing. I existed, suspended in perfect blackness, my mind racing while my body lay still as carved stone. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I couldn't move. Yet I wasn't suffocating. Instead, I existed in a state of suspended animation, my consciousness trapped in an immobile shell. Voices filtered through the darkness, muffled at first, then gradually clearer. A somber baritone resonated above me. Russell Mercer was a man of passion and conviction. In his 47 years, he touched many lives with his generosity and spirit. My name, my age, my eulogy. Panic surged through my mind like an electrical storm, but my pulse remained undetectable. I was at my own funeral. The realization crystallized with horrifying clarity. I was presumed dead, yet fully, agonizingly aware. The air around me was heavy with the mingled scents of lilies and formaldehyde. The polished wood of what I now understood to be my coffin felt cold against my back, even through the suit I'd been dressed in. My final suit, chosen without my consent. He leaves behind his loving wife, Margaret, and his daughter, Emily, both of whom he cherished above all else. Margaret. Her face appeared in my mind, soft brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled, chestnut hair that caught the light, slender fingers that had touched my face just days ago. Or had it been longer? Time had become fluid, unreliable. I strained against my paralysis, willing just one finger to twitch, one eyelid to flutter. Nothing. My body remained a prison of flesh, unresponsive to my desperate commands. As the prayer ended, footsteps approached. The coffin creaked slightly as someone leaned over it. A drop of moisture, a tear, fell onto my cheek and slid down to my ear. I couldn't even flinch at the sensation. "Oh, Russell." Margaret's voice choked with emotion. "I'll miss you so much." Her words should have comforted me. Instead, they sent a chill through my paralyzed form. Something in her tone, some subtle note beneath the grief, registered as wrong, like an instrument slightly out of tune, not enough for most to notice, but jarring to those who knew the true sound. Memory flickered like a faltering flame. The night before, what I thought was my death. Margaret bringing me a glass of whiskey. The unusual bitter aftertaste. The creeping numbness that had started in my fingertips and spread inward. My heartbeat slowing. Her face watching. Not with horror or concern, but with patience. The tranquil passage process is revolutionary, a professional voice explained above me. Dr. Howard, I presumed, the mortician from Serenity Gardens Memorial. The synthetic preservation compound allows natural death processes to conclude while preventing decomposition. The funeral home's specialization in this advanced method now seemed like cruel irony. I was trapped in the midpoint between mortality and preservation, held in stasis by chemicals that maintained my appearance, while my consciousness remained horrifyingly intact. "And you're certain he's gone?" Emily's voice. My daughter. 24 years old, analytical like me, suspicious of convenient truths. Even in my state, pride flickered within me at her questioning tone. Standard protocol requires a 24-hour waiting period before final sealing, Dr. Howard continued. It's mostly tradition, of course. We'll complete the preservation process tomorrow morning, 24 hours. A window of opportunity. That's thoughtful, Margaret remarked, her voice tight. Though I can't imagine why we'd need to wait. The scent of her perfume, vanilla and amber, drifted over me as she leaned closer to the coffin. I felt her fingers brush against mine, a feather-light touch that arranged my hands more perfectly over my chest. The law requires it, Dr. Howard replied, his tone professionally neutral. State regulations for the tranquil passage method are quite specific. I heard Margaret's slight intake of breath, so subtle that only someone who had shared a bed with her for 15 years would recognize it as frustration. The paralysis from the tetrodotoxin. I was certain now that's what she had used. Left me unable even to regulate my awareness. I couldn't sleep, couldn't drift into unconsciousness to escape this nightmare. I could only think, remember, and realize with growing horror what had happened. A door opened. The sound of high heels clicking against the floor grew louder, then stopped beside my coffin. Russell. Margaret's voice, no longer performatively grief-stricken. I need to make sure you understand why this is happening. Her fingertips traced the edge of the coffin, inches from my face. You never truly saw me, did you? Always focused on your own needs, your own desires. 15 years in your shadow, adjusting myself to fit your expectations. Her voice remained quiet, controlled. Did you know I started painting again last year? No, you didn't notice the studio I set up in the garage. Just like you didn't notice when I stopped loving you 3 years ago. Her words sliced through me more effectively than any scalpel. I hadn't noticed. I could have just left, she continued, her voice thoughtful. Divorce is so common, isn't it? But then I'd get half of everything at best. This way? She paused, and I could almost see her smile. This way, I get it all. The house, the investments, the insurance, a fresh start. The funny thing is, she continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper, no one will ever suspect. Your high blood pressure, your family history of heart problems, everyone saw this coming eventually, just not quite so soon. 24 hours, she murmured. Then it will be over. I'm sorry it has to be this way, Russell, but I've waited long enough for my life to begin. Time distorted in the coffin. Only the subtle changes in ambient sound gave me any sense of time's passage. The paralysis was absolute, yet paradoxically, I felt everything. The slight pressure of the coffin's padded interior, the unnatural stiffness of my starched collar. Most of all, I felt the crushing weight of Margaret's betrayal pressing against my chest more heavily than any physical constraint. The sound of the funeral home's front door opening interrupted my thoughts. Multiple footsteps approached my room. "I just want to see him one more time." Emily's voice, tight with emotion. "Before tomorrow?" "Of course, Miss Mercer. Take all the time you need." Dr. Howard's professional compassion. "Dad." Emily's voice was closer now, directly above me. If only I could move. If only I could signal to her. My daughter, the one person who might question, who might look closely enough to see the truth. "He doesn't look right," she said suddenly. "I'm sorry?" Dr. Howard's voice, confused. "Something's off. His color, it's not like when someone's passed." Emily's voice grew firmer. "And look at his eyes. The eyelids naturally settle in a slightly open position sometimes," Dr. Howard explained. "We generally close them fully before the final preservation." "No, it's not that. I swear they moved." My consciousness surged at her words. Yes, Emily. Look closer, Miss Mercer." Dr. Howard's voice was gentle but firm. "I understand this is incredibly difficult. Many people experience these moments, seeing what they wish to see." "I'm not imagining it," Emily insisted. "Something's wrong. Dad had this thing about being buried alive. It was like a phobia for him. He made me promise I'd always check, always be sure." She was right. After reading Poe as a teenager, I'd developed an irrational fear of premature burial. The bitter irony of my current situation wasn't lost on me. "I want another doctor to look at him." Emily's voice cracked slightly. "Please, just to be sure." "That would be unusual," Dr. Howard said carefully, "but not impossible. However, we would need next of kin approval. That would be your mother." "Then call her," Emily said. "Call her right now." The sound of a phone being dialed. Rings echoed through the quiet room. "Margaret Mercer." My wife's voice, slightly surprised. After brief explanations, Margaret's voice acquired a careful neutrality. "Emily," she finally said, softly chiding. "You're traumatized. We all are. But this isn't healthy." "Mom, please." "Dr. Howard," Margaret interrupted. "Is there any medical reason to believe my husband isn't deceased?" "No, Mrs. Mercer. All standard protocols were followed." "Then I think we need to accept reality and allow the grieving process to proceed naturally." The call ended. I felt a surge of desperate hope as Dr. Howard moved closer to the coffin. "I'll perform a standard examination," he explained to Emily. I felt his cool, gloved fingers press against my neck, searching for a pulse that the tetrodotoxin had rendered imperceptible. He lifted one of my eyelids fully. The first change in my visual field since awakening in this nightmare. This was my chance. If any part of me could move, any minute twitch or dilation, now was the moment. Pupillary response is absent, Dr. Howard noted clinically. No sign of cardiovascular activity. No! I screamed within the prison of my mind. I'm here! I'm alive! Wait! Emily's voice was sharp. Do that again. Check his eyes again. Dr. Howard obliged, lifting my eyelid once more. I swear I saw something, Emily insisted. A tiny movement. There are certain substances that can create a death-like state, he said carefully. Extremely rare cases. But in my 40 years of practice, I've read about them. What are you saying? Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. Given your concerns and certain subtle anomalies I'm observing, I believe we should delay the final preservation process until we can conduct more thorough tests. Just to be absolutely certain, in the stillness of my paralysis, a spark of hope flared to life. I was alone with Dr. Howard. After Emily left to make arrangements for additional tests, he had remained in the viewing room. Mr. Mercer, he finally said, his voice low and measured. If you can hear me, I want you to know that I suspect what might have happened to you. In my younger years, I worked briefly in Haiti, he continued. I witnessed cases there, substances that could induce states virtually indistinguishable from death. Tetrodotoxin is one such agent. Yes, my mind screamed. That's it. The door opened. The familiar sound of Margaret's heels approached. Dr. Howard, she said, her voice carefully modulated. I'd like a word. Their footsteps receded, leaving me alone once more. Minutes stretched endlessly until the door opened again. I appreciate your understanding, Dr. Howard. Margaret's voice had regained its composure. Something in his tone had changed. The certainty, the suspicion from earlier, had been replaced by a strange formality. Dr. Howard's footsteps retreated, and the door closed, leaving me alone with my would-be murderer. Well, Margaret said, her voice dropping to a whisper. That was inconvenient. Your dutiful daughter nearly complicated things, she continued. But fortunately, Dr. Howard is a practical man. When faced with the choice between pursuing an unlikely theory or accepting a generous donation to the funeral home's renovation fund, he made the sensible decision. Cold horror washed over me. She had bought his silence, his complicity. The tests won't happen, she explained calmly. Instead, they'll complete the preservation process tonight. A small adjustment to the schedule, that's all. Her perfume, once comforting, now sickening, enveloped me as she leaned closer. This isn't just about money. This is about freedom. From your expectations. From your subtle control. The truth is, I've besaid for years in our marriage, she said. Now it's just making official what's been true all along. One of us needed to go. And you always said you'd die for me. Now you get to keep that promise. Time passed. Minutes or hours, I couldn't tell. The door opened again, and multiple sets of footsteps entered. We'll begin the final preservation now, Dr. Howard's voice announced. Mrs. Mercer has signed all the necessary authorizations. I felt hands positioning equipment near the coffin, heard the soft hiss of pressurized systems being prepared. Begin the process, Dr. Howard instructed. I heard a mechanical sound, then the subtle hiss of gas being released into the coffin. The door burst open with a crash. Stop! Emily's voice, breathless and commanding. Stop right now. Miss Mercer, your mother has... I don't care what she authorized, Emily interrupted fiercely. I have a court order. This is highly unusual, Dr. Howard said, his voice tight. Judge Harriman is a family friend, Emily explained, and he takes potential medical malpractice very seriously. This emergency order requires independent verification before any further procedures. And I've brought someone who can help with that, Emily continued. Dr. Langhorne from County General. She specializes in toxicology. Dr. Howard, a new female voice greeted coolly. I understand there's some question about this death certificate. I'd like to perform some tests immediately. I felt the preservation gas being shut off. Hands moved around me, unfastening something near the coffin's edge. I'm drawing blood for immediate analysis, Dr. Langhorne explained. And I'm administering a counteragent that will neutralize certain paralytic toxins if present. Something cold entered my veins. The sensation, the first active feeling beyond passive awareness since this nightmare began, was shockingly intense. Hands moved over me, clinical and thorough. Fingers pressed against my neck, lifted my eyelids, checked my reflexes. Interesting, Dr. Langhorne murmured. Very interesting. And then, a miracle. The slightest twitch in my index finger, imperceptible to anyone not watching for it, but to me, it was an earthquake, a revolution, a resurrection. There, Emily's voice, triumphant. His finger moved. I saw it. Indeed, Dr. Langhorne confirmed, her voice calm but urgent. We need to get him to the hospital immediately. This man is not dead. He's been poisoned with a neurotoxin that mimics death. The room erupted into activity. I felt my body being lifted, transferred, moved with urgent care. Someone should inform Mrs. Mercer, Dr. Howard suggested, his voice strained. Oh, don't worry about that, Emily said, her voice carrying a hardness I'd never heard before. The police are already speaking with her. They were very interested in the contents of her evening tea. Her tea? Dr. Langhorne asked. Yes, Emily replied, and I could hear the grim satisfaction in her voice. The one containing the same substance that nearly killed my father. The one I've been replacing with harmless herb tea for the past week, ever since I found her research on tetrodotoxin on her laptop. As they wheeled me toward the ambulance, I felt the paralysis receding further. A finger twitch became a hand flexing. An eyelid flickered. My lungs expanded slightly more with each breath. I was coming back from the dead. And Margaret was going to a cell. Justice, like life itself, sometimes hangs by the thinnest of threads. But when that thread holds, resurrection is possible. Behind the cerulean door. Summer. Vlog. Part 1. Uploaded. June 20th, 2024. Video transcript. Hey, guys. Cassie here. Today is the first day of my songwriting retreat. I've just arrived at the cabin and absolutely love it. I'm so excited to bring you along on this summer journey with me. This cabin is exactly what I need. A quiet little place to write some new songs and finally finish the ones I started during our tour. And you guys, just look at this place. There's a forest, there's a lake, and there's literally nobody else for miles. Well, maybe more like a few 100 meters, but still. And here's the cabin. Doesn't it look cozy? I mean, sure, on the outside, it's a bit worn down. The landlord said he just inherited it and hasn't had enough time to fix it up. But guys, the main treat is inside. Let me show you, okay? Here we are. I love this rustic wood paneling and the floors. And, oh my God, these windows, they're huge. So much light. I didn't expect a cabin this far north to have such big windows. But I guess the original owners mostly used it in the summer. Though there's a really lovely fireplace too. But I have no idea if it still works. And drum roll, please. Here's the star of this humble abode. This old, trusty, upright piano. You guys, I'm so happy I found a cabin with a piano. There's just something special about writing music on a real acoustic instrument. It feels so much better than any electronic keyboard. It's like the older the instrument is, the more stories it has to tell, you know? But I did bring my portable MIDI keyboard, just in case. This piano is probably way out of tune, but I'll try to fix it. I think I'm gonna set up my laptop right here on this coffee table so I can put some mics near the piano and record my songwriting sessions. Now, here's a small kitchen area. There's running water and everything, and I've already stocked the fridge. Gosh, these windows. Can you imagine how nice it's gonna be to make a cup of coffee in the morning and just sit here, looking at the lake? Anyway, let's get on with the tour. Over here, we've got a door to what I'm guessing is a storage room, or maybe a shed? Not sure. But look at this color. What do you call it? Teal? Or cerulean, maybe? We should totally paint our studio back home this color. I really like it. But in any case, it's locked. The landlord said he doesn't even have a key, so I guess we have a little mystery on our hands. Okay, and here's the bedroom. Not much space here, and I can barely stand straight in this corner. But it's so cozy. Kinda like a hobbit hole. I've started unpacking already. Sorry for the mess. Now, let's go check out the lake. Oh my gosh. It smells amazing out here. I wish you guys could smell it through the screen. It's like pine trees, fresh grass, and a cool breeze from the lake. And listen, can you hear the birds? Not sure if the camera mic is picking it up, but I hope you can. I know I'm gonna spend so much time down here, drawing inspiration from nature. Anyway, I'm gonna settle in now, play some piano, well, maybe try tuning it first, and I'll check in with you guys soon. The reception here is kinda spotty, but I'll do my best to post regularly. See you soon. Bye. Summer Vlog Part 2 uploaded June 21st, 2024. Video transcript. Hey guys. So, it's my second day at the cabin. Last night, I stayed up way too late working on a new song. And I guess my brain didn't fully shut off when I finally went to bed. 'Cause I'm pretty sure I dreamed a melody. Isn't it funny how our minds work? Sometimes I hear a song in my sleep. And in my dream, it's the most incredible thing I've ever heard. But when I wake up, it's kinda meh at best. Or worse, it's not even my song at all. Just something I heard before. But every now and then, I do get a real song idea from my dreams. Honestly, even when I'm awake, it feels like songs already exist somewhere out there. You know? Like when I'm really in the flow, inspired, or whatever you call it. It's like the music comes to me, and I just have to write it all down before it slips away. Weird, huh? Other times, it's more like solving a puzzle. I have all these pieces. I just have to figure out where they fit. And when I find the right spot, it just falls into place. Maybe there's a place where all the songs and stories live, and we're here just to write them down. Who knows? Anyway, enough of my rambling. I tuned the piano as best I could. A couple of keys are still slightly off, but I didn't want to push it and risk breaking something. It's good enough for now. All right, I'm gonna go write down some new song. You guys have a good one, and I'll check in with you soon. Bye. Summer Vlog Part 3 uploaded June 23rd, 2024. Video transcript. Okay, guys, this is weird. Remember how I said I dreamed of a melody? Well, now I'm not sure it's just a dream. I've been hearing this melody in my sleep every night, and last night I woke up, but the song didn't stop. I still could hear somebody or something humming it. It was really soft, but it was definitely there. I tried recording it, but my mic didn't pick up anything. Just background noise. I swear, I'm not making this up. This song, it's so beautiful, so full of longing, but it gives me goosebumps. and not entirely in a good way. And the weirdest part? It's like it's stuck in a loop. It just ends abruptly and starts over, like it's forgotten how it ends. And now it's stuck in my head. Oh, wait. I'm so stupid. I definitely didn't get enough sleep. Here, let me sing it for you. Then, now you see what I mean, right? It's like it's missing its ending. Anyway, maybe it's just my brain doing weird musician stuff. I'm gonna go explore the woods now and try to clear my head and then focus on my own songs. Let me know what you think in the comments. See you soon. Bye. Summer Vlog Part 4 uploaded June 25th, 2024. Video transcript. Hey guys, sorry for this shaky on-the-go vlog, but I just found out something, and I have to share it with you. So, today, I went into town to get some supplies, and I ended up chatting with this old guy at the shop. When I mentioned I was staying at the lakeside cabin, his whole face changed. Like, he actually looked disturbed. He told me that about 30 years ago, another musician rented the same cabin. He thinks his name was Daniel or David, something like that. And he just vanished. I have to find out more about this missing musician. I'm gonna hit the local library tomorrow and see what I can dig up. Oh, and before I forget, no, I did not distort the audio in the last vlog on purpose. I didn't even realize the part where I sang the melody got corrupted. I tried recording it again later, but when I played it back, all I got was this weird, distorted static. And after the third try, the electricity actually went out. Maybe the song wants me to finish it first. Or maybe it's just so old school that it only wants to exist in analog. Either way, for now, I'll just have to stick to good old pen and paper. All right, I'll keep you posted. Bye. Summer Vlog Part 5 uploaded June 26th, 2024. Video transcript. Hey, guys. I have an update on the missing musician mystery. So, of course, I tried Googling it first, but without a full name, I didn't get very far. But today, I went to the town library, and I actually found an article in a local newspaper from 1994. Here, I made a copy. There's not much information here, but at least it confirms that a musician really did go missing. His name was Daniel Hart, and he disappeared in July 1994. From what I can tell, the police didn't search for him too hard, since he was a touring musician and wasn't from around here. They figured he just moved on. But here's the weird part. The article says that all his belongings were left at the cabin, including his guitar. Now, show me a musician who would willingly leave their instrument behind. I also talked to the librarian, this super stern elderly lady, and she actually remembers Daniel. He came by a few times to research local history and culture. She told me He always seemed to have his head in the clouds, and I think when I was leaving, the lady mumbled something like musician's curse, but I'm not totally sure. Not creepy at all, right? Now, about the melody, I transcribed it into sheet music and have been working on the ending. I've been writing down every option I come up with, but nothing fits yet. But there's something wrong with my notes. I don't think I wrote some of these variations in my notebook. I remember the versions I had in my head, but on the page, they're different. I don't know. Maybe I screwed up and made a bunch of mistakes when I wrote them down. Or maybe I'm just going crazy, like some of you suggested in the comments. It looks like my handwriting, but it's hard to tell with just the do and lines in the notation. And these cadences feel more than just incompatible with the main melody. They feel wrong, almost sinister. Honestly, the fact that I don't remember composing them freaks me out even more than Daniel's connection to the cabin. Summer Vlog, Part 6, uploaded June 28th, 2024. Video transcript. Guys, look, I just noticed this page sticking out from under the locked door. I swear it wasn't there before. Let's see. Oh, wow. It's the song. But, there are a couple more bars added at the end. It looks old. And the handwriting isn't mine. Do you think it's Daniel's? Jeez, how is that even possible? And why did this page suddenly appear now? I don't believe in ghosts, but this feels like too much of a coincidence, right? Also, I'm not just hearing the melody at night anymore. Now, it comes as a faint whistling whenever a draft moves through the room. It gives me chills, though I'm not sure if it's the sound itself or just the cold air. Am I losing my mind? Summer Vlog, Part 7, uploaded June 29th, 2024. Video transcript. Guys, I've made some progress on the melody. I got a couple more bars right. I can feel it, but it's still not finished. It's like it's just on the tip of my tongue, but I can't quite get it right. It's louder now. I hear it even outside in the wind, though the farther I get from the cabin, the fainter it becomes. And of course, I can still hear it in my head, since I'm constantly thinking about it. It's the ultimate earworm. There's this urgency in it now. I've got shivers crawling up the back of my neck all the time. I think it wants me to figure it out. And soon. Sorry, I don't have much time to spare. Gotta get back to work. Summer Vlog, Part 8, uploaded June 30th, 2024. Video transcript. Okay, this isn't just cabin weirdness anymore. I ran into town to pick up some groceries, and when I came back, the whole place was trashed. They tore out a few pages from my manuscript notebook, and there are deep scratches on the locked door, like someone was trying to pry it open. but they didn't take my laptop or camera. The only thing that makes sense is that they were after the song. But why? Luckily, I had Daniel's sheet with me. I know the rational thing would be to pack up and get out of here immediately. But I don't think I can. I need to finish this song. I've always felt like it was important, and now I know it is. I think I'm getting closer to figuring out the right ending. The melody is clearer now, and sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I swear I see it. This pale blue ribbon of light flowing around me. SVN News Report, July 1st, 2024. Forest fire near Songvale Lake. A fast-moving wildfire broke out overnight near Songvale Lake, with fire crews working since early this morning to contain the spread before it reaches nearby homes and hiking trails. Authorities believe the fire may have originated at a lakeside cabin, possibly due to faulty wiring in the aging structure. At this time, there is no confirmed information about potential victims. Evacuation warnings have been issued for several properties along the eastern edge of Songvale Lake, and officials are urging residents to stay alert and be prepared to leave if conditions worsen. SVN News Report, July 2nd, 2024. Missing musician. Last seen near Songvale Lake. Authorities are searching for Cassie Reed, a 29-year-old musician who was last seen in the town of Ridgepoint, just a few miles from Songvale Lake, the day before a fast-moving wildfire broke out in the area. According to local authorities, Reed was reported missing by her manager after she failed to show up for a scheduled video call yesterday. She had been renting a lakeside cabin near the fire's suspected point of origin. Reed was last seen on June 30th at a small grocery store in Ridgepoint. Witnesses say she appeared distracted and was acting strangely. Authorities have not confirmed whether Reed was inside the cabin when the fire started. Officials are urging anyone with information about Cassie's whereabouts to come forward. Meanwhile, her fans have taken to social media, using the hashtag #FindCassie to share updates and express their concern. Summer vlog. I'm alive. Uploaded July 8th, 2024. Video transcript. Hey guys, Cassie here. I know many of you have been worried, but I'm okay. I had to go dark for a while. Someone, or something, set fire to the cabin, and they still might be after me. And the melody. I know some of you already thought I was crazy. Now, you'll be sure of it. But hear me out. I believe the song saved me. I found the right ending. I know the whole song now. It happened just a couple of hours before the fire. The moment I played the melody from start to finish, I heard a creak. The cerulean door opened. Inside, there was a room filled with old instruments, flutes, violins. I think I even saw Daniel's guitar. And there were cassette tapes, too. There were many more musicians before me or Daniel. I don't know what happened to them, but many of them tried to write this same song. I found heaps of sheet music in that storage room, all in different handwriting. Some pieces were definitely the same song, with variations of the last part, though not many were finished. What's interesting is that some of them felt right to me, even though they were different from my version. Maybe the ending isn't just about fitting the song. Maybe it's about reflecting the person writing it. And there were other songs, completely different ones, each with variations of their own. I don't know what that means yet, but I believe this song holds some kind of benevolent power. A protection spell, maybe. Something that keeps a darkness at bay. A darkness that's been trying to destroy the song and anyone who tries to finish it. I think all those creepy feelings I had were coming not from the song itself, but from that darkness trying to scare me away. And when I finally finished the song, it got really, really mad. I must have dozed off while going through all that sheet music. But I woke up to the melody whistling under the eaves. It was so loud and piercing, like a siren. That's when I smelled smoke. The cabin was on fire. I grabbed as many pages of music as I could reach and ran to the living room to get my laptop. But everything was already on fire. I couldn't get to the door. Luckily, those huge windows made a great escape point, and then I just ran. Now I'm safe. And the song is too. I can record it now. I'm not sure if it's because it's complete or because that dark power doesn't stand in the way anymore. But I still have so many questions. I have so much research to do to fully understand what it all means. So I'm going to disappear again for a while. But I will leave this song with you. It's out there now, everywhere you can listen to music. And I think it's important that as many people as possible hear it, sing it, remember it. This song matters, and I'm going to find out why. Wish me luck. Eyes wide open. The sun hung low in the sky, casting shadows over the cemetery. It was a beautiful day for a funeral. Mourners gathered at the top of the hill, circling the open coffin to say their last goodbyes, as Donna Herman had passed, or so they thought. Her family, dressed in black, stood closest to the coffin. Blurry shapes hovered above her. Muted voices drifted through the thick fog of her mind. Distant, yet familiar. Donna Herman wanted to scream. She could see them. Her children, her grandchildren, her so-called loved ones, standing around her, dressed in black, murmuring their final goodbyes. The sky loomed somewhere beyond them, pale and streaked with the fading sun. The coffin beneath her was lined with silk and covered in a thick scent of lilies. In the words of the pastor beside her, she was dead, but she wasn't. She was right there. She could hear them. She could see them. Panic surged through her. slamming against the walls of her motionless body. She tried to move, to twitch a finger, to part her lips, to scream, but nothing obeyed. She was trapped in her own body. Frank was the first to give the eulogy. He was Donna's first son, her golden child. As he spoke, his younger brother, Josh, stared silently at their mother's body. Even in death, the old woman refused to rest. He remembered the doctor's remark that no matter what they tried, his mother's eyes wouldn't shut. They had asked him if he wanted to sew them shut, but he couldn't bring himself to do it, and neither could his elder brother or younger sister. "Are you Joshua Herman?" Josh blinked, snapping out of his thoughts and turning to the source of the voice on his left. "Oh, just Josh, sir," he said, clearing his throat. Two men in black suits stood before him, wearing sunglasses and carrying an aura of authority. The one on the left spoke first. "Nice to meet you, Josh. I'm Detective Foreman, and this is my partner, Detective Davis," he said, extending a hand. Josh shook it. "Thanks for coming out here. I didn't know what else to do." "You did the right thing by calling the police," said Detective Davis. "We'll investigate this matter thoroughly." Josh offered them an awkward nod as he noticed his brother's speech was about to come to an end. "I'll speak with you after the funeral," he said, before walking up to the podium to give his own speech. The detectives stuck around, speaking to everyone who seemed like a person of interest. "She was like a mother to me," cried Cheryl Herman, Frank Herman's wife. She clutched tightly to her tissues, crocodile tears sliding endlessly down her cheeks. Her husband comforted her by rubbing her shoulder, but he too was too distraught to be questioned properly. Josh's wife, Celia Herman, had a lot to say about the entire family. She grumbled about how much Josh had suffered due to his and his mother's disagreements over his marriage. "We haven't been over in a while," she muttered. "I only know that Frank and Millie were the ones in charge of her care after we left the house." "Can you tell us more about Frank and Millie?" Detective Davis asked. "Sure thing," Celia said. She turned to the boy sitting on her lap. "Won't you go to Daddy now? His speech is about to end." She ushered away what looked to be a 5-year-old boy, the spitting image of Josh Herman. Once he was gone, she reached into her purse, pulling out a cigarette and lighting it. "What would you like to know?" she said, blowing out a cloud of smoke. Detective Foreman coughed. "Anything you could tell us that you think is relevant will do," he said, waving the smoke away from his face. Celia took a long drag before she spoke. "Frank is the golden child, you know. He can do no wrong in that old bag's eyes. Even though Josh has been the one keeping the business afloat, Frank has always gotten all of the credit. And Millie," she exhaled slowly, tapping the ashes off the side of her chair. "Well, Millie's got her own issues, dating a scumbag like Cameron. What was your and your husband's relationship like with the deceased before she passed?" Detective Davis asked. Celia sighed and pressed the cigarette into the armrest beside her. I haven't spoken to that woman or set foot in her house since she called me a gold-digging whore the day I gave birth to Gabe, she said bitterly. Josh always tried to keep the peace, though. He spoke to her as often as a son should. Detective Davis nodded, jotting down notes. Right. Thank you, Mrs. Herman. We'll contact you if we have any further questions. He exchanged a few quiet words with his partner, and the two detectives split off into the crowd. Detective Foreman found Cameron lingering near the back of the gathering, hands shoved into his pockets, rocking slightly on his heels. Unlike the rest of the family, he didn't appear grief-stricken. If anything, he looked bored. Cameron, right? Foreman asked, pulling out his notebook. Yeah. Cameron barely glanced at him. How long have you been with Millie Herman? A couple of years? Nothing serious. Cameron shrugged. Look, man, I don't know what you expect me to say. The old bag hated me. Wouldn't even let me within 10 feet of the mansion. Foreman raised a brow. Why didn't she like you? I'm a DJ, Cameron said flatly. You think Donna Herman would have wanted her goody-two-shoes daughter with someone like me? He flicked his gaze toward the casket, his lip curling slightly. Not that it matters now. At the same time, Detective Davis approached two well-dressed men standing slightly apart from the family. Julio Hernandez, a longtime business associate of Donna's, and Ben Handover, her lawyer. Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Handover, Davis greeted. Mind if I ask you a few questions? Julio adjusted his cufflinks. Of course, detective, though I don't know what else to say. Donna's death was unexpected. Ben let out a sigh. Truly unexpected. There was still so much to be done before he stopped himself. Davis caught the hesitation, his grip tightening on his notepad. Before what? Ben hesitated, lowering his voice. Before she finalized the changes to her will. Davis's brow lifted. What changes? She mentioned wanting to reassess her assets and how they would be distributed. But she fell into a coma before anything was made official. Julio cut in smoothly. Donna was very careful with her affairs. It's a shame she never got the chance to put her final wishes into writing. Davis absorbed the information. A sudden death right before a change to a will? That was a clear motive for murder. But who in the Herman family would have wanted Donna gone before she could make those changes? His gaze shifted to the nearby staff. Anne, Donna's longtime maid, stood with red-rimmed eyes, clutching a handkerchief. Beside her, Carlos, the butler, remained stoic, his expression unreadable. Davis approached them. Did either of you notice anything unusual in the days leading up to Mrs. Herman's passing? Anne sniffled. She was in a coma, but she was showing signs of improvement. I never thought. She shook her head, unable to continue through the sobs. Carlos cleared his throat. There were tensions, sir. Madame Herman's children didn't see eye to eye when it came to her care. His eyes flickered toward Frank, Cheryl, and Millie. Frank and Cheryl insisted she remain at home. Millie argued she'd be better off in a care facility. Davis frowned. Cheryl was involved in Donna's care? Carlos hesitated before nodding. More than involved. She handled everything with the doctor. He wasn't just hired for Donna. He's been treating Cheryl's family for years. Davis narrowed his eyes. That was a detail worth investigating. Donna fought harder to be able to move, but her body would not listen. She knew who had harmed her. She could tell them herself if she could just speak. Desperation clawed at her, and somehow she forced her eyes to shift, darting around in search of anyone who noticed. And someone did. Gabe, the little boy's breath hitched. He didn't understand death. Not fully. He didn't like funerals, didn't like the way Grandma looked in the coffin, and he certainly didn't understand why, if she was supposed to be asleep forever. She had just blinked at him. "Mommy?" His voice trembled. "Mommy, Grandma's eyes are moving." Silence, then a soft chuckle. "Oh, sweetheart," Celia cooed, smoothing down his hair. "That's just your imagination, honey. Grandma's asleep." "No, no, no!" Donna screamed inside her mind. "I'm here! I'm still here!" A new voice, warm and honeyed, drifted over the murmurs. Children and their wild imaginations, right? Donna's blood ran colder than the silk beneath her. Cheryl, the woman who had put her here, the woman who had killed her, and no one would ever know. One by one, her family members approached to place flowers on her coffin. Some averted their eyes. Others kept them tightly shut. No one dared to look at her face. And no matter how hard she tried to flicker her gaze, no one noticed. Then, the last one stepped forward. Cheryl, Donna's blood boiled beneath her frozen skin. Cheryl smiled sweetly, crocodile tears welling in her eyes as she spoke about family, about bonds that could never be broken. Then she leaned down, her lips brushing against Donna's ear. "I know you're still in there." She pulled back just enough to meet Donna's unblinking stare, a serene expression settling over her face. One hand caressed Donna's cheek, as if in mourning. "Don't you worry." Cheryl's words seeped down her ear like a searing poison. "I'll have Frank join you as soon as the inheritance comes through." The funeral of Evelyn Warren. The chapel was too quiet. Grace sat in the front row, her hands tightly clenched in her lap. She couldn't stop staring at the closed casket, the weight of it pressing down on her chest. Her mother, Evelyn Warren, was supposed to be in there. Gone. The whole world seemed to have shifted under her feet. But Grace couldn't fully accept it. Not when the last time she saw her mom, she was barely clinging to life in that hospital room. The pastor spoke about Evelyn's life, about her kindness, her strength, her love for her family. Grace barely heard him. Her mind kept drifting back to the hospital, the soft beeping of the machines, the moments of whispered conversation between her and the nurses. "She's not going to make it," they'd said, and everyone had gathered around, waiting for the inevitable. But how had they gotten it so wrong? How was she really gone? A door creaked open, faint, but loud enough to break the silence. Grace's eyes snapped up instinctively. The air in the room seemed to change, thickening with something she couldn't place. At first, it was just the soft sound of the door, but then she noticed people in the back of the chapel, turning their heads. It wasn't just the noise. There was something in the way the air shifted, something tense. Something didn't feel right. At first, Grace didn't see anyone. She just heard the door. But then, she caught a glimpse of a figure stepping through, standing still in the doorway. A woman. Her figure barely visible in the dim light. Grace's stomach dropped. The figure was too still, too stiff. She couldn't see her face, just the outline of someone standing there, looking almost out of place. But then, the figure stepped forward. It was a woman, wearing a simple dress, her hair falling loosely, almost wild, around her face. Grace's heart skipped a beat. There was something about the way the woman moved, about the way she stood there, her presence pulling every eye in the room toward her. Something in Grace's gut twisted. She knew that woman. She knew her all too well. Her breath caught in her throat. Grace stood up slowly, her legs shaking. The woman wasn't talking, wasn't even moving, just standing there. But it didn't matter. Grace's eyes were locked onto her, a strange panic flooding her chest. It was like something inside her was telling her this wasn't a mistake. "Mom," Grace whispered, the words barely leaving her mouth. But the woman didn't answer. She stood still, her eyes scanning the room. There was something about her, about the way she looked, like she was lost or confused. Grace couldn't breathe. Every instinct screamed that it wasn't possible. She was just imagining things. But the figure, that woman, had to be her mom. Her voice trembled as she repeated the word. "Mom?" The woman blinked. Once, twice. She took a step forward, her gaze still unfocused. Grace took a hesitant step toward her, and then, slowly, the figure's eyes found Grace. They locked, and for a brief moment, the room fell completely silent. The woman's lips parted, but the words were slow, unsure. I'm not dead." The room seemed to hold its breath. Grace's mind was spinning. Her body was still frozen, a wave of confusion and disbelief washing over her. She wanted to ask a million questions, but no words came. The woman, Evelyn, took another step forward, her face pale, her expression distant, as if she were struggling to remember why she was here. "I didn't die," she whispered again, almost to herself, before her eyes finally met Grace's. "I'm not dead." Grace's mouth went dry. Her hands shook. Her mom, standing there, alive, and looking like she hadn't just been on the brink of death. It didn't make sense. She couldn't make sense of it. Not when she had just signed the papers hours ago. Not when she had seen the doctor shake his head. Not when the nurses had told her it was over. She took a step closer, her heart racing. "Mom? How are you? What's going on?" Evelyn's eyes were distant, like she was still trying to piece everything together. "I don't know, Grace," she said, her voice low, almost trembling. "I don't know. I was in the hospital, and then I woke up somewhere. I don't remember how or why. It doesn't make sense." Grace felt the floor beneath her shift. It wasn't just her confusion anymore. The whole room was holding its breath. The whispers around her, the people shifting in their seats. It all felt like the world was tilting, like something that should have been impossible was somehow here, in front of her. Her mother was here, alive, but no one knew why. A voice broke through the silence, sharp and incredulous. "What do you mean you woke up somewhere?" It was Mark, Evelyn's husband, standing at the back. His voice was trembling, but it was louder than the rest. "How could you just wake up? You were dead, Evelyn." Evelyn turned slowly toward him, her gaze steady but tired. "I don't know what they told you, Mark," she said, each word heavy. "I don't know what happened, but I'm not dead. I'm standing here. I'm alive." Mark shook his head, his face pale, his hands clenched by his sides. "This doesn't make sense. I saw them roll you out. I saw them." His voice broke for a moment. "I thought we were done. I thought I was burying you today." People exchanged uncertain looks, some beginning to stand, others shrinking back into their seats. Everything had been turned upside down in an instant. Grace's mind was racing. "But the hospital, the machines, Her voice faltered, as if the words themselves were too heavy. "I was there, Mom. I saw you. I told you I loved you. She couldn't finish. The memory of her mom lying there, so fragile, barely clinging to life, was still too fresh. It didn't make sense. How could she be standing here now? So normal. Evelyn stepped closer, but there was no comfort in it. She wasn't the same Evelyn that Grace had known. She seemed distant, even when she stood right in front of her. It was like she was here physically, but her presence was off. She looked like someone trying to remember who they used to be. "I don't know why they told you that," Evelyn said softly. "I don't know what happened, but I swear to you, Grace, I wasn't dead. I didn't die, but we were all told you were gone," Grace whispered, her voice cracking. "Why didn't you come to us?" "I couldn't, Grace. I don't know what happened, but I couldn't remember how to get back. Everything felt so strange, like I was still in the hospital, like I wasn't allowed to leave." Grace couldn't breathe. None of this was making sense. "I need answers," Mark said, taking a few quick steps toward Evelyn, his face twisted with disbelief. "You don't just get to show up after we've all mourned you, after we've buried you, and say you're fine. I heard them tell me you were gone." His voice was sharp, raw. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" "I'm not joking, Mark," Evelyn said, her tone suddenly hard, but there was a weariness behind it. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm not here to confuse you. I'm just telling you the truth. I don't know what happened, but I'm not dead." The room was silent again, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Grace wanted to scream, to shake her mom and demand answers, but she could only stand there, frozen. The casket behind her, her mother's casket, was a cruel reminder of everything that was supposed to be real, of everything that wasn't. "Maybe you should sit down," someone whispered from the back. Grace couldn't tell who it was. Evelyn's eyes flickered around the room, scanning the faces. And for the first time since she entered, she seemed to register how many people were watching. Some were looking at her in disbelief, others in fear, unsure of whether they should approach or retreat. "I'm not trying to hurt anyone," Evelyn repeated, her voice quieter now, though there was something like sorrow in her tone. "But I can't explain this. I don't understand it. I don't understand how I'm standing here either. I don't understand any of this." Grace felt tears threaten to spill, but she fought them back. The world was too heavy. It felt like her brain couldn't catch up with what was happening. The way her mother looked, alive, but not the same, was like a dream, like something she'd imagined in her worst nightmare. And yet, here she was, in front of them, breathing, standing, alive. "I'm sorry," Evelyn said, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but I'm here now." Grace, standing there, couldn't shake the feeling that the answers weren't going to come easy. And maybe they never would. The white door. It's been locked since the day we moved in. No one can find the key anywhere. Nobody has a clue if and what it leads to if they could access it. It's a locked door with no key, and it sits in the middle of our bedroom wall in the room I share with my younger sister, Chloe. It's a strange, plain white door with the number 13 written on the top of it, also in white. It merges in completely with our white wall. Even the door handle is white, making it blend in so well. It's almost invisible, and most people completely miss it. When one of us that can see it point it out to them, they appear perplexed. It seems only a few of us are able to see it. I could have said, it's like a picture of a door painted onto the wall itself. But on closer inspection, it is slightly indented, and the white handle sticks out a little from the wall in a 3D effect. Chloe, along with my parents, claim not to be able to see it, and that I'm making it up in my imagination. But my older brother Felix claims to have not only seen it, but opened it when we first moved here. You opened it? Yeah, once on my 13th birthday, a couple of years ago. What did it lead to? And what did you do with the key? It didn't lead to anything. Flory, just the inside of a brick wall, and there was no key. It was unlocked already. Then how did it get locked? I don't know, Flory. Maybe Mum or Dad locked it? You can hardly blame them. What's the point of having a doorway to the inside of a brick wall? There wasn't even a corridor or secret passageway. I'd forget about it if I were you. It's completely pointless. Probably someone's idea of a laugh or something. You know, to catch nosy people like us out. Why would Mum and Dad lock it and pretend they couldn't see it? I thought to myself. The mystery of the door growing deeper in my mind. Don't get me wrong, Felix's discovery on opening it did make total sense. After all, the wall it was a part of was one of the two outside walls of our room. The one next to it was the window wall, as we like to call it. But like Felix said, why on earth would you want to have a door that led to the bricks of your house? Surely the builders would have just put a complete wall there, like all the other rooms. It also didn't explain the jingly musical sound and singing voices that came from behind the area of the door on a night, or the light that shone underneath it, lighting up the darkness. I'm pretty sure I've also heard other voices from behind it, too. Nothing spooky, sounding just happy and giggly, almost like there are children on the other side of the door playing. It gives out a nice vibe when I hear them, leaving a smile on my face. Flory, earth to Flory, you're daydreaming again. Sorry, Chloe. What was you wanting? Mum asked what you want for dinner. The options are spag bowl or chicken curry and rice. Ugh, neither. I'm not even hungry. Whichever you want, Chloe. You are gonna eat it though, right, Flo? My little sister questioned me suspiciously. Sure, maybe. I don't know. I'm still full from lunch. I might just grab a salad. Yeah, tell Mum I'll get myself a salad. I quite fancy that. Chloe looked unconvinced, but left the room to let Mum know anyway. A while later, Mum came and tapped on the bedroom door. Flory, can I come in? Sure. I've made you up a chicken salad, like you asked for. But I have to say, I'm getting worried about you. You're not eating properly. Though I understand salads are a good choice, you also need to be eating other things. Mom, you don't need to worry. I'm okay. I'm just not fancying the same food I did before. And salad is a healthy choice, especially as you added the chicken. Well, okay, I'd like you to come and eat it with me. I'm having one too. We need to sort your birthday party out. I don't think your guests will want salad as their only choice of food, do you? I don't know. A salad birthday cake sounds healthy to me. I giggled, the reply, something I hadn't done for a while. This made her smile as we both went to the dining room to eat. The chicken salad was good, and I agreed to have a chocolate cake for my birthday party. I didn't really have the heart to tell her that I didn't want a birthday party, and no one would come anyway. She seemed more excited about my birthday than I did. A week later, my birthday was finally here. And while my parents and sister were busy putting the decorations up, I called Felix over. There was something I wanted to know from him. As we went to my bedroom, I could already hear the children's voices again. They seemed to be singing something, but I couldn't tell what. Do you hear that? Hear what, Flory? The singing? It's coming from behind the door. Not really, but it does look a bit different. Look, the 13 is standing out 3D like the handle. It was like that when we moved in before I opened it. It's your 13th birthday, Flory. It can't be a coincidence, can it? He put his ear up against the door to try and hear the voices. Looking back at me, he suddenly gulped and said, Flory, you're right. There is someone on the other side of the door. They're calling for you, but I thought you said it was just bricks behind there. It is. Well, it was when I opened it. I slowly creeped over to where he was at the door. What should I do, Felix? I don't know. Maybe you should try and open it? I don't have the key, remember? Neither did I. When I opened it, remember? I just grabbed the handle and pulled it down. Give it a try. What do you have to lose? Okay, but please hold my other hand. I don't want to do this alone. You don't have to, Flory. I'm right here with you. Okay, here goes, ready. I grabbed Felix's hand and pulled down the handle. The door swung open. Sure enough, it looked like nothing was there but a brick wall. Then I heard it too. Flory, help me, Flory. I had no choice but to risk hitting the brick wall as I stepped inside the doorway. Just in front of me was a winding downward staircase made of stone steps. I looked behind me and saw my room again. But who was calling me? And how did they know it was me? I made a decision. I was going to go down the staircase and find out who it was. I turned back again to see the door closing. Wait, no, don't close it. I thought you was coming with me. I am with you, Flory. Once on this side, the door closes until it's time to return to your party. Quick, let's go. Felix made his way down the staircase and out of sight before I could have a chance to think. How did he know that? He said it was only a brick wall. Had he actually stepped inside and been here before? Felix, wait. Flory, we help Flory. There it was again. I'm coming, I replied, and started descending the stone staircase slowly, as I wasn't sure it wouldn't make me slip. I hoped Felix was all right. He had practically ran down them. Felix, are you still there? Hello? No response. Even the other voice had gone quiet. As I got lower, I could hear a dripping sound begin. It started slowly and sounded like a long drip each time until it eventually sped up into a drip, 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 drip. By this point, the stone stairway was also damp and starting to become completely waterlogged at my feet. I wasn't sure I could actually go down any further when the voice started calling again. Flory, help Flory. It was sounding more desperate. I'm nearly there. Where are you? Just as I went to take a step down into the water, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Not that way, Flory. You'll drown if you go that way. Follow me this way. Felix, why didn't you go slower and stay with me? I knew you'd find me, Flory. Come on, give me your hand and step up onto this ledge on the right. I had been so focused on not slipping down the stairs, I hadn't bothered to look around me. I grabbed Felix's hand again as he helped me up onto the ledge. I paused to look around us. We seemed to be in a cave. The walls were solid stone. Looking up, I could see stars glinting above. At least they looked like stars. But unless it was a dormant volcano or other cave with an outside view, they were probably not stars. Maybe we were in a diamond or crystal cave, seeing them glinting above. Or maybe that was the dripping water droplets. Either way, it was so beautiful. I felt my breath catch in my chest at the sight. The water I had almost stepped into appeared to have a fast current, and I was glad Felix had been there to guide me to the ledge. Where to now? I asked eagerly. Follow me. It's this way. The ledge wasn't very wide and was a little slippery, but we got there slowly. When we reached the end of the ledge, Felix lifted me down, pointing in the direction we were going to next. It was very bright, almost blinding. I lifted my arm to shield my eyes as I looked towards what I guessed was the sunny outside. I wasn't far wrong. We stepped out into a beautiful summer's day. There were flowers, trees, lovely green blades of grass with a beautiful silver water fountain in the middle. Swings on the trees, a pool. Children were playing happily, skipping, dancing, and singing around. Some were making daisy chains, while others were making buttercup chains. The lyrical sound of birds chirping and singing. The whole place gave me a peaceful feeling, just like a happy dream. Only this was a real place I'd come to from my bedroom, down the stone staircase into a summer's garden. So I had heard children laughing and singing, though the white door, yes, you had. Felix replied, almost secretively. "Why don't you come and meet some of my friends?" He beckoned me to follow him again. "Your friends? But you said there was nothing but a brick wall behind that door. How can you have friends here already?" He glanced at me with a comical expression on his face that said, "Seriously? You need to ask?" But all he said was, "Follow me, you will see." I stepped onto the grass with him and started following as we got to the silver water fountain. I heard the voice again. "Flory, please, Mom. Dad, Flory, help." I glanced into the fountain and saw Chloe in tears and me on my bed. She was shaking me, crying, looking helpless. Mum and Dad rushed into the room. Suddenly, my breath caught again in my chest. I could feel the pressure as Dad pumped 119-223, and Mum was breathing into my mouth in between. I felt the warm breeze flow down my throat into my lungs. The white door appeared on my left. Felix was still on my right. The fountain still in front of me. "Felix, what's going on? You have to choose Flory. Come with me and meet my friends this way, or go back through the white door to Chloe and our parents. Choose Flory before it's too late." "But I don't understand." "Felix, what about you?" "I'm always with you, Flory. Stay with me now, or go back to Chloe before the door stays closed." Without another thought, I bolted towards the white door, my heart beating hard in my ears. I jumped through it into my bedroom and onto my bed, turning to see the door slowly closing, with Felix still behind it, smiling and waving goodbye. "Felix!" I cried out, bolting upright on my bed. "Flory, Flory, you died. Flory, you wasn't breathing. I couldn't help. I'm so glad you came back. I couldn't bear to lose you too." Chloe sobbed. I held her in my arms, soothing her as she stained my top with tears. Mum and Dad looked like they had seen a ghost, their faces as white as the door that used to be on my wall, but had completely disappeared as it had closed, taking Felix with it. "Did you shout out Felix when you came back, honey? Was you with Felix when you were gone? Is heaven real?" My mum seemed to have a million questions. "Don't be silly, dear. Felix died on their birthday 2 years ago. He drowned in Glitter's Cove. He can't have been with her. Once you're gone, you're gone. Isn't that right, Flory?" I wasn't sure what to tell my dad, or who to answer first, so I decided to answer them both at once. "I don't know about heaven, Mom, but there seems to be a peaceful, happy place. And yes, Felix was with me." "Dad, Felix is always with me. I'm his twin, remember? The N. Rakotsbrücke, the Devil's Bridge. Rakotsbrücke, the Devil's Bridge. Whispers of mystery had long shrouded Rakotsbrücke, the legendary Devil's Bridge in Kromlau, Germany. Stories had swirled about its eerie perfection for generations, how its reflection in the still waters formed a flawless circle, Some believed it was merely an optical illusion. Others claimed it was something more, a portal to the unknown. Hans and Gerda Schmidt had grown up in the shadow of these legends. Their childhoods were filled with hushed tales passed down through the years, some dating back over a century. But the most chilling story was always the same. At certain times of the year, the bridge's reflection wasn't just a trick of the light. It was a gateway, and those who crossed it at the wrong moment were never seen again. Most dismissed such stories as mere folklore, but Hans and Gerda couldn't ignore the unsettling number of disappearances. Determined to separate fact from fiction, they spent months scouring old newspaper archives, compiling every recorded vanishing link to Rakotsbrücke. With each faded article, each cryptic account, a pattern emerged. If their calculations were correct, the next opening of the gateway was near. And this time, they would be there to witness it. Their research had uncovered a chilling pattern. The phenomenon occurred only once in winter, but was far more frequent during unseasonably warm periods in the warmer months. This week, temperatures were set to spike well above normal, and Hans and Gerda were convinced that the anomaly was bound to happen again. Armed with sophisticated audio and video equipment, Hans, Gerda, and several close friends set up camp near the bridge early Monday morning. Their goal was simple: capture undeniable proof of the anomaly. They weren't the first to try, of course, but they were determined to be the first to succeed. Each member of the group would take turns operating the equipment, ensuring the bridge was never left unwatched. Gerda was first. Luck would have to be on her side. She steadied the camera, framing the sublimely unsettling structure as it loomed over the river, its reflection dissolving into the rising morning mist. Days passed as the majestic bridge stood in solemn silence. Time was running out. By Thursday, tension had given way to celebration. The group partied, drank, and danced near the eerie silhouette of Rakotsbrücke, their initial excitement fading into the rhythm of the night. Laughter echoed through the trees, until a sudden burst of blinding white light shattered the darkness. A collective gasp cut through the air. Hans, Gerda, and the others sprinted toward the equipment, hearts pounding. Julio, the group's cameraman for that night, stood motionless, his camera locked onto the event. Then he sighed and shook his head. False alarm. They followed his gaze to the source. A biker gang rolling through the woods, their headlights gleaming off the water, engines rumbling like distant thunder. It was an illusion. The spacing of their bikes on the bridge and the reflection of their lights momentarily brought the bridge alive. From a distance, the bridge looked like a space portal had formed. "Are you recording this?" Gerda asked Julio. "Never stopped. At least we can add it to the footage of our trip when we edit the video." The air deflated from their lungs, Shoulders slumped, heads hung low. Disappointment settled over the camp like a heavy fog. By Sunday, hope had dried up completely. They packed some of their things, one by one, muttering the same defeated refrain, "We'll try again next year." Ever the optimist, Gerda climbed onto a picnic table, raising her beer in defiance. "I want to thank all of you for coming to witness what never was," she announced, her voice carrying over the quiet camp. "But tonight, we're forgetting about that damn gateway. Tonight, we party like it never existed." A roar of approval followed, and soon the music and laughter returned. None of them noticed the waters beneath Rakotsbrücke begin to shimmer. None of them saw the perfect gaseous cloud take shape inside the circle once more. Even Julio, who found himself once again on camera duty, did not notice the bridge coming alive. It was midnight, and the others were still lost in their revelry at the campsite. None of them was there to witness what was unfolding. He might have caught it sooner, if not for Fräulein Gretchen. She had been eyeing him since they passed his group while hiking on Monday. Now, as the others partied, she had cozied beside him, drawn to the quiet observer behind the camera. Since he did not drink, he had no problem operating the equipment, though tonight his attention was divided. That night, Julio had his blanket on the ground. Fräulein Gretchen and he were making out when he caught a glimmer of light out of the corner of his eye. Standing up immediately, he checked to see if the camera and audio were working. Gretchen was still playfully fondling his ear with her lips. "Stop. This is important. Can't you see what's happening?" he said to her with a stern but playful voice. "Look at it. It's getting brighter and brighter. Come on, let's get closer." The luminous gateway had a compelling allure, almost trance-like, and it kept tugging at their interest. At the river's edge, there was a small rowboat. They went down to the water, determined to get a closer look. Meanwhile, the light got bright enough to grab the attention of the others partying at the campsite. Hans was the first to notice the light. "Look, guys, the forest is beginning to light up. Must be responding to our partying," he said playfully. "No, I think it's the bridge," Gerda said as she took off, running toward Julio's location. The rest of the gang took off after her. There was no sign of Julio near the video equipment, and the forest glow was getting brighter and brighter. Gerda turned toward the bridge, her thoughts conflicting. She wanted her full attention to find Julio and not care about the bridge, yet the bridge was mesmerizing. Her heart was racing as the ominous light loomed large. "Julio! Julio!" the rest of the group yelled. The yells from her friends temporarily knocked her back to reality. She saw a small rowboat drift through the fog on the far side of the river. Her stomach clenched. That same boat was near them when they first set up the equipment on Monday, and it hadn't moved until now. Guys, get over here. Gerda's voice cut through the tense air. She was standing near the equipment. As they gathered around, she maneuvered the camera so everyone could see it. The camera began playback with the motorcycles, and they watched as the humming of the bikes slowly transformed the water. Look at the water, guys. It appears to be vibrating. Would the sound waves have that big of an effect on the water? Hans asked. It must have, she replied as she zoomed in on the water. When I go back and view the water, it is always completely calm. Something had to stir it. Gerda forwarded the camera to the moment the bridge came alive, and what they saw blew their minds. As they began watching, they heard a female voice. Stunned, Gerda rewound the tape, and sure enough, there was a flirtatious voice in the background. Maybe Julio is at the nearest hotel? A voice in the background whispered, drawing quiet snickers from the group. Quiet! Gerda snapped as they continued watching the video. Then they saw it. The gateway. Look at the bridge! My God, it's real! There's Julio and the girl. Hans pointed. They watched as the two made their way down the steep slope. Julio jumped in the boat first and turned to help Gretchen aboard. Freeing themselves from the riverbed, he slowly rowed toward the ominous, bright light, as if he were in a trance. Gretchen sat in front of him, leaning back on his chest, mesmerized by the gaseous light. They were approximately 30 yards from the gateway, and the recording stopped. What? What happened? Hans asked. I don't know, Gerda replied. No, this can't be happening, she shouted. She rewound the tape for a few seconds and played it back, but the same ending showed each time they watched. Scheisse, Gerda exclaimed. What do we do now? We have 2 people missing, and the tape shows us something, only up to the point where we think they have disappeared. What are we going to tell people? We tell the truth, Gerda. This is why we came here, to find the truth. Hans added, but we don't have the truth. Only partial truths that add to the folklore. This tape will open up more questions than answers, and we will at the tail end of it, searching for more clues. Lynn, Gerda's best friend from London, walked over to her, put her hands on her shoulder, and turned her around so she could cry. Once Gerda's head hit her shoulder, she began to sob uncontrollably. Lynn knew the effect the events had on her. All the time and energy she put into this led to nothing but more questions. She also knew that deep down inside, Gerda wanted to see the gateway in action, even if it was at the cost of her friend's life, which made her feel even worse. Lynn lifted her head. Hey, don't worry. You do have something far more than you ever had. We all know what happened here. Most of it is on tape. I say we immediately make a copy of this tape, take it to the police, and let them investigate their copy. And we have concrete evidence to examine on our own. Next time we are here, we will be much better off than before. Lynn's right, Gerda. We now know a lot more than we ever did. We know the vibrations from the bikes started the gateway. We know that we can't stare at it because of its trance-like powers. And we know the best time to be here and get another shot. Hans added. Yes, that's right, Gerda. The others chimed in. 1 year to the day, the crew set up again. In honor of Julio, they set up a makeshift burial plot at the exact location where the camera stood last year. Gerda felt this new location was better. It was on the other side of the lake and had a better view. This time, the crew was on high alert. There was no partying this time. Their campground was just up the hill from the camera, and they could see partial spots of the lake and bridge from their tents. As they were finishing up with their tents, Lynn ran over to Gerda. Look at those two over there, Gerda. She pointed. No, that can't be. They took off running over the bridge, yelling, Julio! Julio! A young man turned around as they approached, staring at them, confused. Yes, how do you know my name? So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.